The sky above the capital city of Xylos did not simply darken at sunset, it powered down. Above the spires of glass and spun iridium, the atmospheric shield shimmered with the color of bruised plums and electric violets, a vast artificial aurora that threaded through the clouds like circuitry. It was beautiful, breathless, and entirely terrifying. Down in the streets, amidst the throngs of citizens moving with the hurried pace of prey animals, no one looked up to admire the view. They looked at their wrists. They looked at the public chronometers embedded in the walls. They looked at the shadows stretching long and thin between the buildings, measuring the seconds until safety. The government called them cosmic weather events. The newscasts spoke of solar flares and magnetic anomalies. But in the low-rent districts and the high-altitude cantinas, the people whispered a different word. They called them the night. Naira Voss walked through the Sector 4 plaza, her boots making no sound on the polished pavement. She was an image of contained violence, a silhouette cut from the hardest materials in the galaxy. Her armor was not merely worn, it was integrated. The sleek obsidian plating rippled slightly as she moved, reading like living metal that breathed in sync with her lungs. It contoured to her body with a predator's elegance, darker than the coming twilight, etched with faint dormant lines of bioluminescence. She was a night warden, one of the elite protectors charged with holding back the dark. As she passed a cluster of civilians, she saw a mother pull a child closer, turning the girl's face away from Naira's helmeted visage. Naira felt the familiar cold weight settle in her chest. She hated this. She hated that her presence, meant to signal safety, only signaled the proximity of danger. The Senate claimed the night wardens were the shield of the people, but Naira knew better. They were the cage bars. Fear was the currency of the realm, and she was the debt collector. Her heads-up display scrolled with data streams, atmospheric pressure, grid stability, crowd density. Everything read normal, but her instincts, honed by a decade of patrols, tasted copper in the air. The rhythm of the city was wrong. It was too quiet, too brittle. She paused near a ventilation interchange, her helmet sensors picking up a spike in unauthorized frequency. High above her, perched on the precarious ledge of a gargoyle-mouthed drainpipe, Elias Kane adjusted the focal length of his lens. He was human, a rarity in the intricate hierarchy of Xylos, and he possessed the distinct disheveled charm of a man who had not slept in 20 hours. His jacket was genuine leather, scuffed and worn, a relic from Earth that smelled of old tobacco and rain, scents that didn't exist in this sterile, sanitized metropolis. Just get the shot, Elias told himself. Just get the damn shot. He leaned out further, his boots slipping slightly on the damp metal. Below him, the restricted security drone bay was cycling open. It was supposed to be a maintenance hatch, but Elias had spent 3 weeks tracking shipping manifests that said otherwise. He wasn't here for maintenance. He was here for the crate being loaded into the shadows, a crate marked with the sigil of a medical relief group but guarded by men holding high-velocity pulse rifles. He snapped the shutter, the camera, a modified antique capable of bypassing digital jammers, whirred softly. That soft whir was the loudest sound in the world. Elias saw the movement in his peripheral vision, a blur of black metal scaling the vertical wall with impossible speed. He scrambled back, trying to shove the camera into his jacket, but gravity and momentum were against him. He turned to run, but there was nowhere to go. A hand made of articulated steel clamped onto his shoulder. He was spun around and slammed against the wall hard enough to knock the air from his lungs. The world narrowed down to the point of a vibrating energy blade hovering 1 inch from his Adam's apple. Elias froze. He stared into the opaque, T-shaped visor of a night warden. He could hear the hum of the suit's servos and the low, dangerous buzz of the blade. "State your designation and clearance," a voice said from the helmet. It was a woman's voice, filtered through a vocoder, stripped of emotion but terrifyingly calm. Elias swallowed, feeling the heat of the blade against his throat. "I am a tourist," he wheezed. "I got lost. Nice architecture you have up here. Very gothic." The blade did not waver. "You are carrying unauthorized optical tech in a restricted military zone. That makes you a spy. Spies are liquidated on sight." "Wait, wait," Elias said, raising his hand slowly. "Not a spy. Journalist, investigator. I am mostly harmless. I swear. Check my pockets. No weapons. Just a very expensive camera and a half-eaten protein bar that tastes like wet cardboard." The night warden tilted her head. The visor cleared, retracting with a hiss of pressurized air to reveal the face beneath. Elias blinked. He had expected a scarred veteran or a cybernetic zealot. He did not expect Nira. Her skin was pale violet, dusted with markings that looked like constellations, and her eyes were a piercing, luminous silver. She was severe, sharp-angled, and stunning in a way that made his mouth go dry. She looked at him not with malice, but with a clinical assessment. She patted him down with her free hand, finding the camera, the protein bar, and his falsified identification. Elias Kane. She read from the ID card. Occupation, xenological observer. "It sounds better than nosy reporter," Elias said, trying to regain some dignity despite being pinned to a wall 300 feet above the ground. "And you are?" "Officer Nira Voss," she said. Elias grinned, a lopsided, reckless expression. "Nice to meet you, Officer Nira Voss. Did I say that right? It rhymes with boss, right?" Nira stared at him. The deadpan seriousness of her expression did not crack. "It is pronounced Nir-ah," she corrected, her voice flat. "And it does not rhyme with anything in your language." Elias's grin widened. Nir-ah. Got it. "Look, Nir-ah, if you were going to liquidate me, you would have done it already. You saw me fumbling with that camera. Spies do not fumble. I am just a guy looking for a story." Nira deactivated the blade. The glowing edge vanished, leaving the alley in shadow. She released him, stepping back but keeping her hand near her hip. "You are reckless, Elias Kane. Recklessness is a short path to a grave in this city." "I am chasing a lead," Elias said, straightening his jacket. "People have been disappearing from the lower districts. The officials say they moved off-world, but there are no transport records. Today, I saw crates loaded into a drone bay that does not exist on the public blueprints." Nira stiffened. Her own investigations had noted gaps in the census data, discrepancies she was ordered to ignore. "You should stop chasing," she said quietly. "The night is coming." "I am not afraid of the dark," Elias said. "You should be," Nira replied. Her internal comms unit chimed, a sharp, invasive sound inside her ear canal. She held up a hand, silencing him. "Report," commanded a voice she recognized. It was her sector commander. "Subject located," Nira subvocalized. Her eyes locked on Elias. "A human male, non-combatant. Monitor him," the commander ordered. "If he possesses sensitive data, remove the complication. We cannot have loose ends before the festival initiates." Nira felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wind. "Remove the complication." It was a euphemism for murder, delivered with the casual tone of someone ordering lunch. "Understood," Nira said. She cut the link and looked at Elias. He was watching her, his investigator's eyes intelligent and wary. He knew something had just shifted. You are free to go, Naira said, lying smoothly. But get off the roof. The Festival of Lights is starting. If security catches you up here again, I will not be the one who finds you. Elias hesitated, sensing the tension in her posture. He nodded slowly. Thanks for the save, officer. Maybe I will see you in the crowd. Do not count on it, she said. He vanished down the fire escape, a shadow slipping away. Nira watched him go, her hand resting on the hilt of her deactivated blade. She had disobeyed a direct implication of an order. She should have detained him. She should have seized the camera. But as she looked at the heavy encrypted crates being loaded into the drone bay below, she realized the human was right. Something was being hidden. And for the first time in years, Naira Voss wanted to know what it was. The Festival of Lights was a desperate attempt to scream at the darkness. The central plaza of the capital was a sea of bodies and brilliance. Floating lantern drones drifted overhead like schools of glowing jellyfish, casting shifting patterns of amber and teal across the crowd. Holographic ribbons of music wove through the air, visible sound waves that people could reach out and touch, bursting into sparks of color upon contact. It was dazzling. It was loud. It was a lie. Elias moved through the press of bodies, keeping his head down. The sensory overload was intense. The aliens around him, tall, slender beings with skin ranging from obsidian to alabaster, moved with a frantic kind of joy. They drank shimmering nectar from crystal flutes and laughed too loudly. They were trying to forget that the sun had set. Elias checked his pocket watch, an analog affectation he kept grounded in Earth time. His contact was late. He was supposed to meet a defector from the Senate staff near the Royal Transit Bridge, someone who claimed to have the codes to the detention program. He pushed his way toward the bridge, the massive arch of transparent alloy that spanned the decorative river. The water below was black and still, reflecting the frantic lights above. Nira stood at her post near the bridge entrance. She was a statue of authority, her helmet on but her visor clear. She scanned the faces of the crowd, looking for threats, looking for the human. She told herself she was monitoring him as ordered. She did not want to admit she was worried about him. She saw him near the railing, looking anxious. He was checking his watch. Then, the music faltered. It wasn't a stop, it was a stutter. The holographic ribbons flickered and turned gray. The floating lanterns dipped, their anti-gravity drives whining in protest. A hush fell over the plaza. Thousands of voices died out in a single second. Nira looked up. The sky, which had been a protective dome of artificial twilight, rippled. The circuitry of the atmospheric shield groaned, a sound like tearing metal that vibrated in the teeth of everyone present. Then, the lights went out. All of them. The city did not just go dark. It was erased. The darkness that poured in was not the natural absence of light. It was heavy. It was thick. It moved like liquid ink, flooding down from the spires, drowning the streets. Screams erupted, sharp and terrified. Naira's suit automatically switched to thermal vision, but the display was full of static. The darkness was interfering with her sensors. This was not a cosmic weather event. This was a precision strike. The grid hadn't failed. It had been murdered. "Get to shelter," Nira shouted, her voice amplified by her helmet. "Clear the streets." Panic turned the crowd into a stampede. People trampled one another in their rush for the designated bunkers. Nira fought against the tide, scanning the bridge. "Elias!" she shouted. Forgetting protocol. She saw him. He had been pushed against the railing by the surge of bodies. He was holding his camera like a shield, his eyes wide, staring at something manifesting in the center of the bridge. It was a shadow, but it had mass. It rose from the floor, a coalescing swarm of black particulates. It looked like smoke that had learned to hate, a creature of living darkness, vaguely humanoid but shifting, serrated, and endless. It had no face, only a gaping maw where the light seemed to be sucked in and destroyed. The creature lunged toward the nearest civilians when it did not bite. It passed through them. The victims fell instantly, their bodies seizing, their bioelectric energy drained in a flash of blue static. Elias scrambled backward, vaulting over the railing onto a maintenance ledge to escape the crush. The shadow thing turned its head, or what passed for a head, toward the movement. It detached from the main darkness and flowed over the railing like oil. It was hunting him. Nira didn't think. She ignited her thrusters, a short, controlled burst that launched her over the screaming crowd. She landed on the bridge with a heavy metallic clang, drawing her energy baton. "Run!" she commanded, sprinting toward the edge. Elias didn't need telling twice. He was scrambling along the narrow maintenance catwalk, the black swarm flowing behind him, dissolving the metal grating where it touched. Nira reached the railing and vaulted over, dropping onto the catwalk behind the creature. She swung her baton, a weapon designed to shatter riot shields. It passed through the shadow mass with zero resistance, but the energy discharge made the creature shriek, a sound like grinding glass. The swarm recoiled, then whipped around, lashing out with a tendril of darkness. It struck Nira's chest plate. The impact was like being hit by a wrecking ball made of ice. Her suit's power levels dropped by 40% in a microsecond. The cold burned through her insulation. She gasped, stumbling back. This is not weather, she thought, her mind racing. This is a weapon. She recovered her balance and looked down the catwalk. Elias was cornered. The walkway ended at a sealed service door. He was frantically keying a bypass tool, but his hands were shaking. The shadow was reforming, growing larger, feeding on the ambient energy of the city. Nira charged. She grabbed Elias by the back of his jacket and hurled him toward a recessed maintenance alcove, a small, blast-proof indentation in the bridge's support pillar. "In!" she yelled. She shoved him inside and slammed the manual lock on the grate. It was a flimsy barrier. The shadow creature slammed against it, and the metal hissed, beginning to corrode. Nira backed into the small space, pressing Elias against the rear wall. It was cramped, dark, and smelled of ozone and rust. The darkness was leaking through the grate, tendrils of black smoke curling toward them. "My projector," Nira gasped, fumbling with her gauntlet. "I have a portable shield." She slammed her palm against the activator on her wrist. The device whined, flickered with a pathetic spark of yellow light, and died. "Damn it," she hissed. "The field is too dense. It is draining the batteries." Elias looked at the grate. The metal was glowing red as the darkness ate through it. "We are going to die in a closet," he said, his voice trembling. "That is a terrible headline." Nira looked at him. She saw the terror in his eyes, the raw, human vulnerability. She looked at her dead gauntlet. She had one option left. It was forbidden. It was dangerous. It was intimate in a way that violated every protocol of the Night Warden Code. But she refused to die here. She grabbed Elias by the lapels of his jacket, yanking him away from the wall. Her movement was sudden, violent, and desperate. "Listen to me," she said, her voice raw, stripped of its electronic filter. "If you want to survive this night, hold me." Elias blinked, his brain stuttering to catch up. "What?" "Hold me," she commanded. "Skin to armor, close as you can get. Do it now." Elias stared at her. The darkness was inches from the grate. "That is your plan?" he shouted. "Hug terrorism? This is not a joke." Nira slammed into him, driving him back against the cold wall. She explained it in a rush of words, her breath hitching. My armor. It runs on a biofield lattice. It stabilizes with a rhythm. A single heartbeat is not enough to power the emergency barrier when the grid is down. I need a second pulse. I need a loop. She grabbed his hands and forced them around her waist, pressing his palms against the neural connectors on her lower back. Elias stopped joking. He saw the fear in her silver eyes. It wasn't the fear of death. It was the fear of what she was asking him to do. He tightened his grip. He pulled her flush against him. The contact was electric. Elias gasped. It wasn't just physical pressure. As his chest pressed against her armored torso, he felt a jolt run through his nervous system. It was like touching a live wire that hummed with sorrow. He could feel her heartbeat, not through his ears, but inside his own ribs. It was fast, terrified, and incredibly strong. Naira let out a shuddering breath, her head dropping forward to rest against his shoulder. She closed her eyes and focused. She reached out with her mind, finding the chaotic, frantic rhythm of his human heart, and she forced her own physiology to sync with it. Thump, 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 thump. The rhythm locked. A sound like a choir of glass bells rang out in the cramped alcove. From the surface of Naira's armor, a field of light erupted. It was not the harsh yellow of the standard issue shield. It was iridescent, a shifting pearl-white radiance that pulsed in time with their synchronized breathing. The light expanded, filling the alcove. The shadow creature broke through the grate with a roar of static. It lunged for them. It hit the iridescent field and shrieked. The light burned it. The darkness boiled away upon contact, dissolving into harmless gray ash. The creature recoiled, flailing, unable to penetrate the bioelectric barrier generated by the two bodies pressed together. Inside the circle of light, the world went silent. Elias was trembling. He could feel Nira's body shaking against his. The armor, which had looked so hard and impenetrable, now felt warm, almost feverish. He wasn't just holding a soldier. He was holding a woman who had been cold for a very long time. Nira's composure cracked. The lattice didn't just share energy, it shared sensation. She could feel his confusion, his protective instinct, and a profound, aching loneliness that mirrored her own. She had spent 10 years behind a wall of metal and reputation. Now, this human, this stranger, was woven into her biosignature. Do not let go, she whispered, her voice sounding small. Please, I'm not going anywhere, Elias murmured. He rested his chin on the top of her helmeted head. I got you, Nira. They stood there for hours. The night outside did not lift. The darkness prowled the streets, screaming with the voices of the wind, hunting for life. But in the maintenance alcove, the light held. They moved only when necessary. The cold began to seep through the walls, and the darkness tried to find cracks in their defense. To keep the field active, they had to move as one entity. We need to move, Naira said eventually. The air here is getting stale. She did not pull away. She couldn't. If they broke contact, the shield would collapse, and the shadows would eat them. They moved into the service tunnels behind the alcove. It was an awkward, desperate dance. Elias kept his arm hooked around her waist, his other hand gripping her shoulder. Nira kept one hand on her weapon and the other pressed flat against his chest, monitoring his heartbeat, keeping the rhythm steady. Half embrace, half tactical lock. They walked through the underbelly of the city. They heard screams echoing from the streets above, terrible, cut-off sounds that made Elias flinch. Every time he flinched, the shield flickered. Steady, Nira murmured, her voice vibrating against his chest. Stay with me. Focus on the step. 1 step, 2 steps. I'm trying, Elias whispered. It sounds like hell up there. It is, she said. They navigated through dripping pipes and ancient machinery. The intimacy was suffocating and essential. Elias smelled the ozone of her suit and the faint, unexpected scent of jasmine from her hair beneath the helmet. Naira smelled the sweat and rain on his jacket. They were breathing each other's air. By the time they reached the lower drainage outflow, hours had passed. Elias's muscles were cramping from the tension. Naira was exhausted, her energy reserves depleted by the lattice strain. They collapsed against a dry section of the tunnel wall, still locked together. The darkness outside the tunnel exit began to thin. The oppressive weight in the air lifted. The sun was rising. Slowly, the artificial aurora in the sky flickered back to life. But this time it was the pale gold of morning. The streetlights overhead buzzed and turned on, as if apologizing for the interruption. Naira felt the lattice disengage. The iridescent shield faded, retreating back into her armor. She pulled away from him. The loss of contact was physical. It felt like a layer of skin had been ripped off. Elias stumbled slightly, missing the counterweight of her body. They looked at each other in the gray light of dawn. Naira's face was pale, her silver eyes wide and unguarded. Elias looked wrecked, his jacket torn, his face smeared with grime. Up above, the city's public address system chimed. A pleasant, melodic voice echoed through the ventilation shafts. Citizens of Kylum, the minor grid fluctuation has been resolved. Power has been restored. Please return to your daily schedules. We apologize for the inconvenience. Minor grid fluctuation, Elias repeated. He let out a harsh, incredulous laugh. People died. I saw them die. Naira activated her helmet's long-range scanner. She projected the feed onto the tunnel wall. It showed the bridge where the massacre had happened. It was spotless. Drones were already there, scrubbing the scorch marks, dissolving the gray ash of the bodies. There was no evidence, no blood, no shadows. They are deleting it, Naira said. She watched the footage, her stomach churning. They are deleting all of it. Elias looked at her. Someone wanted this to happen. Naira, that thing, that shadow, it was hunting. It wasn't random. Naira looked at her own hands. She thought of the order she had received, remove the complication. She thought of how the darkness had disabled her standard equipment but left the lethal shadows free to roam. It was a test, she realized, or a purge. My command, she whispered, the Night Wardens. We are not protecting the city from the night. She looked up at Elias, the realization horrifying her. We are the ones inviting it in. Elias stepped closer, not touching her this time, but the distance between them felt charged, electric with the memory of the shield. So, he said softly, what do we do now? Naira looked at the drone footage, then at the human who had kept her alive by simply holding on. She made a choice. We run, she said. The safe house smelled of ozone and abandonment. It was a subterranean pocket buried deep beneath the foundations of District 9. A concrete cube that had once served as a rapid response outpost for the Night Wardens during the Unification Wars. Now, it was a tomb for dust and silence. Naira Voss moved through the space with the rigid efficiency of someone trying to outrun their own nervous system. She sealed the heavy blast door, spinning the manual locking wheel until the tumblers clicked into place with a sound like a breaking bone. From a pouch on her belt, she withdrew a canister of counter-surveillance foam. She sprayed the edges of the door, the ventilation grates, and the cracked optical sensor in the ceiling. The foam expanded rapidly, hardening into a matte gray seal that scrambled audio frequencies and blocked thermal scans. The room was dim, lit only by the low-power emergency strips running along the floor. The walls were etched with faint, silvery lines, old sigils of protection that the night wardens used to carve before they relied solely on technology. It felt less like a tactical bunker and more like a shrine to broken oaths. Elias Kane sat on a rusted crate in the center of the room, watching her. He looked out of place in the stark, militaristic environment. His leather jacket was scuffed, his knuckles were bruised, and his breathing was still too shallow. Naira finished sealing the room and leaned against the far wall, keeping as much distance between them as the small space allowed. But distance, she was realizing, was a relative concept. Her skin felt too tight. The sensory input from her armor was overwhelming, even from 10 feet away. She could feel the phantom pressure of Elias's heartbeat against her own ribs. The bioelectric lattice, once activated, did not simply turn off. It lingered. It left a residue of connection that made her nervous system hum in tune with his. She knew exactly where he was in the room without looking. She knew he was thirsty. She knew his left shoulder ached from where he had hit the wall earlier. It was invasive. It was terrifying. "You are pacing inside your head," Elias said. His voice cut through the quiet, rasping slightly. "I can practically hear the gears grinding." Nira crossed her arms, the armor plating clicking softly. "I am securing the perimeter. The perimeter is a solid block of concrete." "Nira," Elias said, deliberately using his butchered pronunciation of her name to test the waters. "We are safe. Or as safe as we can be when the government is trying to erase us." Nira looked at him. The humor in his voice was a shield, brittle and thin. "Why did you come here, Elias?" "To this planet, I told you," he said. "The story. Stories do not bleed." She said, "People do." Elias shifted on the crate, wincing. He looked at his hands, then back at her. "Speaking of bleeding, what happened back there in the tunnel and when we connected? That wasn't just a battery jumpstart." Naira looked away, staring at the old sigils on the wall. "It is called the Resonance Protocol." "Sounds fancy," Elias noted. "It is illegal," Nira corrected. Elias raised an eyebrow. "Illegal? You are the police. Who makes it illegal for you?" "The Senate," she said. She pushed off the wall, unable to stay still. The lattice technology was designed for squad cohesion. It allows night wardens to share pain, stamina, and sensory data during high-threat combat. But they discovered a flaw in the early designs. If two individuals synchronize their biorhythms too perfectly, the lattice creates a feedback loop. It stops being a tactical network and becomes a bond. "A bond," Elias repeated. "Like marriage, like a gravity well," Nira said, her voice sharp. "It creates a permanent neural pathway. Bond markers. We become attuned to one another. If you get hurt, my vitals spike. If I panic, your adrenaline surges." The Senate banned the protocol 50 years ago. They fear what they cannot control. A soldier who is bonded to another person values that person more than the state. It makes us unpredictable. It makes us human. Elias let out a low whistle. "So basically, we just accidentally engaged in a high-tech soul meld because you didn't want the shadows to eat my face." Nira glared at him. "It is not a soul meld. It is a biological imperative to survive. Do not romanticize it." Elias leaned back, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You know, from the outside, your politics look complicated. But from down here, it sounds like a soap opera with lasers." Nira stared at him. The absurdity of the statement, reducing the complex, tyrannical socio-political structure of the Xylosian Empire to a daytime drama, hit her with unexpected force. A short, sharp sound escaped her throat. It was a laugh. It was rusty and startled her as much as it did him. "There it is," Elias said softly.
The fuck?
You are in there somewhere.
I got him.
Nira's face hardened instantly,
Should I give
the
him
mask slipping back into place.
Supposed to be giving Mav treats at the
We
Rose
have work to
Planet,
do.
literally.
If we stay here too long, the bond markers will
I was
settle.
gonna say the
We
word
need to
treat,
move.
like 5
She moved to the
seconds,
equipment
you have
locker,
chaos.
pulling out a fresh energy cell for her baton. We need to find your contact. If he has proof of the detention program, we can use it to buy leverage. Elias stood up, his playfulness vanishing.
Something treat.
The meeting point was Sector 12,
Treat?
the festival grounds. If he wasn't swept up in the panic,
Lay down.
he will be there, Nira said, or he will be dead.
Actually, guys, I low-key wanna
Sector
play Fortnite.
12 was a wreckage of confetti and shattered glass.
It's like when
The
you
Festival
get
of Lights had ended in a
messed and
stampede,
everything.
and the streets were littered with the debris of celebration turned to terror.
Scared. Not
They moved
scared,
through the
but
shadows,
use my brain.
Naira leading the way, Elias trailing in her wake.
Maybe after
The city was under a soft lockdown. Drones patrolled the overhead airways, their spotlights sweeping the streets in lazy arcs.
Get his peanut butter.
They reached the rendezvous point, a secluded alcove behind a hydroponic garden. It was empty. Nira scanned the area with her thermal optics. Cold. No recent heat signatures. She crouched near the ground. There was a smear on the pavement. It wasn't blood. It was molten plastic and circuit board. Your contact, Nira said, pointing to the slag. Elias knelt beside her.
Play Fortnite.
He reached out,
Oh, what do you
touching a
mean?
small, warped piece of metal embedded in the melted mess. He pulled it free. It was a scorched identification chip.
Fortnite.
They liquidated him, Elias whispered. Nira looked closer. The scorch pattern on the wall above the melted ID was perfectly circular. Too neat.
Okay, it drives
Too
me
hot.
crusty.
This was not a night event casualty,
Peanut butter?
she said. The shadows tear and consume. They leave cold spots. This is plasma scarring. High-grade military tech. She stood up, scanning the alley. And look at the footprints. Elias squinted. What footprints? Exactly, Nira said. The ground is covered in dust from the panic. But this area, swept clean. Someone sanitized the scene. They wanted it to look like he just vanished, but they were sloppy. They left a calling card. She pointed to a small metallic object pressed into the soft alloy of a pipe near the ground. It was a pin. A golden sun with an eye in the center. The Senate insignia,
My cat.
Elias said. A warning, Nira corrected.
No,
To anyone looking for him.
no.
Elias stood up, his jaw tight.
He's licking the
He
cat.
reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out a folded sheaf of papers.
Oh my god.
He had been guarding them with his life. I didn't have everything, he said. That is why I needed the
No,
contact.
Wait a minute.
But I have this.
Wait a minute. You guys can't see.
Nira took the
Hold on.
papers. They were shipping manifests, physical copies that couldn't be scrubbed from a digital server. She scanned the columns of data. To Varen Saul, Senior Senator, Cargo, Medical Supplies, Class A. Class A medical supplies are bandages and Bacta-tanks. Nira said, keep reading. Elias said, look at the weight distribution and power requirements. Naira's eyes narrowed. The power draw for these crates was massive,
See that, right?
and the weight. These weren't bandages. They were heavy containment units. Detention tech, Elias said. Cages, but not for people. Nira flipped to the next page. There was a project code name referenced in the footer. Project Eclipse Latch. The blood drained from Naira's face. She had heard rumors of this in the barracks, whispered late at night by veterans who had seen too much. Eclipse Latch, she murmured. The theory that the night events are not natural phenomena, that they are engines. Engines? To reset the population, Naira said, her voice hollow. The Senate believes that fear is the only cohesive element strong enough to hold the empire together. If there is peace for too long,
First.
regions demand independence. So,
All right.
they created the night. They harvest the dark energy, store it, and release it when unrest grows too high. Weaponized nightmares,
Done.
Elias said, and Varen Saul is the architect. Nira finished. A soft click echoed from the mouth of the alley.
Yeah, sure.
Nira spun around, shoving Elias behind her. The three figures stood at the entrance. They were tall, slender, and wore long, flowing coats of white synth silk. On their faces, they wore diplomatic masks, smooth, featureless porcelain painted with benevolent, smiling expressions in gold leaf. Assassins, Nira hissed. The Senate's cleanup crew. The figure in the center tilted its head. Officer Voss, you have strayed far from your patrol route, and you have picked up a pest. We are leaving, Nira said, her hand dropping to her baton. The assassin sighed, a sound that was amplified by the mask. Regrettable. The three figures moved in a blur. Nira met them. She didn't fight like a brawler, she fought like a dancer. She ducked under a high kick, the air whistling where her head had been, and drove her baton into the knee of the first attacker. The joint shattered with a sickening crunch. The assassin didn't scream, they just collapsed into a combat roll. Elias, get back! Nira shouted, deflecting a vibro blade with her armored forearm. I am trying, Elias yelled. One of the assassins bypassed Nira, leaping off the wall to land in front of Elias. The porcelain smile loomed over him. The assassin raised a serrated knife. Elias scrambled back, tripping over a crate. His hand landed on a heavy industrial tool he had swiped from the safe house. A magnetic cargo lifter. He didn't know how to use it as a weapon. He just squeezed the trigger. The device hummed violently. The magnetic field erupted. The assassin's knife was ripped out of their hand, flying through the air to clamp onto the magnetic head of the tool with a loud clank. The assassin paused, looking at their empty hand. Elias looked at the tool, then at the assassin. I meant to do that. The magnetic field didn't stop. It grabbed the assassin's belt buckle. With a yelp, the assassin was yanked forward, slamming waist first into the tool in Elias's hands. Elias swung the heavy device and the attached assassin sideways, knocking the killer into a pile of waste bins. Nira finished the other two with a precise, brutal combination of strikes, cracking the porcelain masks and leaving the figures groaning on the ground. She grabbed Elias's arm. Move! More will come! They sprinted out of the alley, bursting into the vertical market district. The market was a canyon of commerce, shops stacked on top of each other for 50 levels, connected by anti-gravity transit pods and floating walkways. It was a dizzying vertical maze. They jumped onto a cargo pod that was rising rapidly. Go up, Nira ordered. We need to reach the upper transit lines. Below them, white-coated figures were swarming the lower levels. Laser fire sizzled past the pod, scorching the metal hull. The pod jerked. The assassins had hacked the grid. The anti-gravity drive sputtered. We have to jump, Elias yelled, pointing to a walkway 3 meters away and 2 levels up. Nira didn't hesitate. She grabbed him. Jump! They leaped into the void. For a second, they were weightless, suspended above a drop that went down forever. They crashed onto the walkway, rolling to absorb the impact. They scrambled to their feet, running through the labyrinth of stalls. The market was emptying out. The locals knew the sound of laser fire. Nira skidded to a halt. Ahead of them, the walkway ended. A section of the district had been cordoned off. The floor was rippling with a strange, oily substance. A shadow zone, Nira said breathlessly. The assassins are flushing the sewers with dark matter runoff to block our path. We can't go back, Elias said, looking over his shoulder. The white coats were closing in. We have to go through it, Nira said. Elias looked at the writhing darkness on the floor. It looked like the stuff from the bridge, only sluggish. It will kill us. Not if we shield, Nira said. She turned to him. Her eyes were wide, the pupils blown. She was terrified, not of the shadow, but of the connection. "Do it," Elias said. He stepped into her space, and this time, there was no hesitation. He wrapped his arms around her armored waist. She gripped the lapels of his jacket. They pulled together. The lattice slammed into place. The sensation was 10 times stronger than before. Because now, they weren't just scared, they were exhausted, they were angry, and they knew each other. Nira gasped as Elias's biorhythm hit her. She felt his stubbornness, his jagged fear, and beneath it all, a fierce, burning admiration for her. Elias felt her power. He felt the cold, disciplined steel of her mind and the hot, molten core of desire she kept locked away. The iridescent shield flared around them, brighter than before, humming with a harmonious chord. They walked into the shadow zone. The darkness hissed and boiled, trying to claw at their boots, but the light pushed it back. They moved in perfect sync, hip to hip. Their breathing matched. Inhale, step, exhale, step. The intimacy was overwhelming. It wasn't just physical proximity. It was a merging of senses. Elias could feel the texture of the air on her skin. Nira could taste the blood in his mouth where he had bitten his lip. They reached the other side, bursting out of the shadow zone into a clean service corridor. They didn't let go immediately. They stood there, chest to chest, the shield fading slowly, leaving static in the air between them. Elias's hands were still on her waist. Nira's hands were on his chest. Nira looked up at him. Her breath was coming in short. Sharp gasps. "You have to stop," she whispered. "Stop what?" Elias asked, his voice rough. "Wanting," she said. "The lattice, it feeds on intent. The more you want, the louder it becomes. They can track us by the intensity of the bond. You are screaming on the spectrum." "Elias." Elias didn't pull away. He looked at the violet markings on her skin, the way her silver eyes held a depth of sadness he wanted to drown in. "Do you ever get to choose?" he asked softly. "What you want?" Nira opened her mouth to recite the code, to tell him that a night warden wants nothing but order. But the words died on her tongue. The silence stretched between them, heavy and confession-filled. She pulled away, breaking the contact. The loss was an ache in her chest. "This way," she said, her voice trembling. "I know someone who can hide us." The archive was not a library. It was a hoarding situation, located in a disused sub-basement of the sanitation department. The room was floor-to-ceiling stacks of data crystals, hard drives, and paper books. It smelled of old coffee and overheating servers. Sitting in the center of a nest of monitors was Kiri. She was a Tarlaxian, a species with 4 arms and skin the color of polished copper. She wore a headset on one pair of ears and was typing on 2 keyboards simultaneously. "Well, look what the cat dragged in," Kiri said without turning around. "And she brought a pet." Nira stepped into the light. "Hello." "Kiri." Kiri spun her chair around. Her 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Nira Voss, the pristine protector. You look terrible. Your armor is scratched. Your bio readings are a mess. And..." Kiri sniffed the air. She looked at Elias, then back at Nira. A slow, wicked grin spread across her face. "Oh, this is delicious. You have a human problem." "He is not a problem," Nira said stiffly. "He is a witness. He is a walking bond marker." Kiri laughed. "I can read his neural signature on your skin from here. You two are glowing like a neon sign." Elias stepped forward. "Nice to meet you too. I am Elias." "I know," Kiri said, tapping a key. "Elias Kane, journalist, troublemaker, currently the most wanted man in the sector. Can you help us?" Nira asked. Kiri sighed. She spun back to her screens. Because I owe you for that time on the Mars colony?
Big ass
Fine.
dog may assume
Give me the data.
his name is Matt.
Elias handed over the shipping manifests. Kiri slotted them into a reader. Her fingers flew across the holographic interface. Boring, boring, corruption, embezzlement.
Hello?
Hello? She froze. What is it? Naira asked. Kiri pulled up a timeline. It was a graph of the city's power grid fluctuations over the last 5 years, these night events.
You're being mean, dude.
Kiri said, they are not random. Look at the intervals. Every 42 days, precise to the second, except for the last one. That was moved up,
He's a big boy.
scheduled, Elias said.
He's probably like the
And look
same
at the
guy.
authorization signature, Kiri said. She isolated a string of code. It is encrypted, but I can smell the syntax. This command didn't come from the Weather Bureau. It came from the Royal Security Council. Rune, Naira whispered. Her commander. He is signing the work orders for the darkness, Kiri confirmed. But that is not the worst part. She tapped another key. A list of names scrolled down the screen. Project Eclipse has a subfolder, Asset Disposal. Nira's name was third on the list. Nira Voss. Designation, Bond Risk. Status pending termination. Naira stared at the screen. The text was cold, clinical. They knew, she whispered, even before tonight. You used the lattice once before, didn't you? Kiri said softly, her teasing tone gone. 5 years ago. To save that kid in the flood district. Nira nodded. They flagged you then, Kiri said. They have just been waiting for an excuse. You are a glitch in their system. Nira, a weapon that feels... Nira felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Elias. We can't stay here, he said. No, Nira said. I have to turn myself in. If I surrender, maybe I can testify. Maybe I can expose Rune before they kill me. They won't let you talk, Elias said firmly. They will execute you in a cell and say you died of shame. Then what do we do? Naira snapped, turning to him. We have evidence. But who will listen? The Senate controls the media. They control the courts. We don't need a court, Elias said. We need a symbol. He pointed at the screen. When is the next scheduled night? Kiri typed rapidly. Originally, 3 weeks. But with the acceleration, her eyes went wide. Tonight, she said, in 4 hours. Where? Nira asked. The target coordinates are the upper spire, the Senate Gala. Elias looked at Nira. They are hitting their own party? No, Nira realized. The Gala is in the Solarium Dome. It has independent shielding. The night will hit the districts surrounding the spire. The elite will be sipping champagne behind glass while the servants and the guards outside are slaughtered. It is a show of force, Kiri said. Look how safe we keep you. Elias looked at Nira. His expression was hard, determined. We are going to that party, he said. Nira looked at him as if he were insane. We are fugitives. We cannot just walk into the Senate Gala. We are not going to walk in, Elias said. We are going to break in. We are going to find the master control for Eclipse latch, which has to be on site for a live demonstration. And we are going to steal it. And then? Nira asked. And then, Elias said, we are going to broadcast the truth to every screen in the city. We are going to show them exactly who is holding the switch. Nira looked at the map of the spire. It was a suicide mission. The security would be impenetrable. The risk was absolute. But as she looked at Elias, she felt that dangerous, forbidden rhythm thumping in her chest. She looked at Kiri. Can you get us credentials? Kiri cracked her knuckles. I can get you costumes, and I can loop the camera feeds for 10 minutes. After that, you are on your own. Naira turned back to Elias. If we do this, there is no going back. We burn everything. Elias smiled. It was a terrifying, reckless smile. Good, he said. I never liked the dark anyway. The solarium dome sat atop the highest spire of the capital like a crown jewel made of diamond and hubris. It was a structure of impossible glass, offering a 360-degree view of the city below, a city that was currently holding its breath, waiting for the dark. Inside, the Senate Gala was a blinding display of opulence. Nira Voss stepped through the archway of the main ballroom, and for the first time in her life, she felt entirely unarmored. She was not wearing the heavy, comforting weight of her night warden plating. Instead, she wore a gown procured by Kiri's darker connections, a garment woven from liquid starlight fabric that poured over her body like cascading water. It was a deep, midnight blue that shimmered with constellations as she moved, high-necked but backless, exposing the violet markings on her skin to the recycled air. She felt naked. She felt like a target. Beside her, Elias Kane tugged at the cuffs of a borrowed suit. It was a stiff, high-collared affair made of iridescent silk, tailored to fit his human frame with surprising precision. A universal translation node was embedded in his collar, humming softly against his jugular. Stop fidgeting, Nira murmured, keeping her lips barely moving. You look fine. I feel like a wrapped gift, Elias muttered back, smiling rigidly at a passing dignitary. And these shoes are actively trying to murder my toes. Is it a cultural requirement that formal wear involves pain? It is a universal constant, Nira said. Focus. We have 10 minutes before Kiri loops the security feed. We need to get close to the royal box to scan for the vault entrance. They moved into the crowd. The room was packed with the elite of the empire, senators in flowing robes of crushed velvet, military commanders in dress uniforms, and corporate magnates who owned entire moon colonies. The air smelled of spiced ozone and expensive perfume. Elias, attempting to blend in, reached for a drink from a passing hover tray. He nodded politely to the server. Thank you, my good man, Elias said. The server was a cleaning drone. It beeped an error code and spun in a confused circle. Nira grabbed Elias's elbow, steering him away as heads turned. That was a waste disposal unit, she hissed. It was wearing a bow tie, Elias whispered defensively. Why would you put a bow tie on a trash can? To be festive, Nira said. Stop talking to the furniture. Just smile and look vacant. It is what everyone else is doing. They navigated the room, moving deeper into the shark tank. Nira scanned the faces. She saw Senator Varen Sol near the center of the room, holding court with a group of sycophants. He was laughing, a sound that grated against Nira's nerves. He looked remarkably relaxed for a man planning to massacre the population of the lower districts in less than an hour. Beyond him, on a raised dais protected by a shimmering energy rope, sat Princess Salith. The heir to the throne looked less like royalty and more like a prisoner of war. She was draped in heavy ceremonial gold, her face painted with the white clay of purity. She sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap. To the casual observer, she was the picture of serene authority. But Nira knew how to read tension. She saw the way Salith's fingers were white-knuckled where they gripped her own thumbs. She saw the micro-tremors in the princess's jaw. Salith wasn't presiding. She was enduring. Look at her hands, Nira whispered to Elias. Elias glanced over, taking a sip of a blue fizzing drink. She looks thrilled. She is signaling, Nira said, tapping her index finger against her thumb. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. It is an old distress rhythm taught in the royal nursery. She is trapped. Elias's expression sobered. So the princess is not the villain. She is the hood ornament on the tank. We can use that, Nira said.
Setting this up.
If she is being coerced, she might have the access codes we need.
Honestly,
But we cannot get near her with that security detail.
pre-made cookies with the little like
Two massive Praetorian guards stood on either side of the dais,
in the oven.
their pikes humming with lethal charge. Create a distraction, Nira ordered, a social one. Do not explode anything. Elias sighed, setting his drink down. Social distraction. My specialty. He straightened his jacket and waded into the crowd, heading straight for a cluster of high-ranking diplomats. Nira watched him go, slipping into the shadow of a decorative pillar to observe. Elias approached a tall, avian-like ambassador who was currently lecturing a shorter, reptilian senator. Elias didn't wait for a pause. He stepped right into the circle, flashing a bright, blinding smile. Ambassador! Elias boomed, his translator pitching his voice to a perfect resonant baritone. I must say, your plumage is absolutely radiant this evening. It reminds me of the sunset over the methane lakes of Titan. The ambassador blinked, feathers ruffling in confusion. I beg your pardon? Elias leaned in, lowering his voice conspiratorially. And Senator, I heard about the trade dispute. Let me tell you, as a representative of the Outer Rim Culinary Union, we fully support your stance on spice tariffs. He was lying through his teeth, weaving a tapestry of nonsense with absolute confidence. He touched the ambassador's arm, a breach of etiquette that made the surrounding guests gasp, and then smoothly transitioned into a joke about warp drive mechanics that had no punchline but made him laugh uproariously. The diplomats were baffled, insulted, and entirely focused on him. Security heads turned. The Praetorian guards on the dais shifted their attention toward the loud, strange human in the center of the room. Nira watched him, her hand resting on the hidden seam of her dress where a small, flat blade was concealed. She should have been annoyed by his recklessness. Instead, she felt a strange, tightening sensation in her chest. He was charming. He was brave. He was walking a tightrope over a pit of vipers just to buy her time. A female senator with jeweled skin glided up to Elias, placing a hand on his chest, clearly intrigued by the exotic stranger. Elias didn't pull away. He smiled at her, tilting his head in a way that Nira recognized. It was the same way he looked at her when he was trying to be disarming. A sharp, hot spike of jealousy pierced through Nira's discipline. It was irrational. It was unprofessional. And it was unmistakably the bond amplifying her emotions. The lattice flared silently under her skin, reacting to the chemical spike of possessiveness. She gritted her teeth, forcing the feeling down. Focus, Voss. While the eyes of the room were fixed on Elias, Nira slipped past the energy rope. She moved with the fluid grace of a shadow, sliding behind the heavy tapestry that hung behind the throne. She found the access panel. It was disguised as a decorative inlay. She pulled Kiri's decryption tool from her hair. It looked like an ornate pin, and jammed it into the slot. The panel hissed. Access granted. She signaled Elias with a subtle tap on her comms earpiece. Elias, mid-sentence about the virtues of Earth coffee, suddenly grabbed his stomach. Oh dear, he announced. The spice tariffs. They are disagreeing with me. I must find air. He extricated himself from the bewildered senator's grip and stumbled toward the side exit, slipping behind the heavy velvet curtains where Nira was waiting. The moment the curtain closed, the noise of the party muffled to a dull roar. They were in a narrow service corridor, lit by dim blue strips. Elias leaned against the wall, letting out a long breath. I think I just accidentally proposed marriage to a mining conglomerate. You were enjoying yourself, Nira said, her voice tighter than she intended. Elias looked at her, surprised by the edge in her tone. I was working. That woman had hands like ice tongs. Nira turned away, keying the sequence into the hidden door. You are very good at lying. Elias stepped closer. He could feel the radiation of her mood through the bond, the prickly heat of her irritation and the underlying current of something softer, more vulnerable. He reached out, his hand hovering near her waist but not touching. Hey, Nira, look at me. Nira paused, her fingers freezing on the keypad. She turned her head. I wasn't playing, Elias said quietly. Out there? That was noise. This? He gestured to the small, dark space between them. This is the only thing that is real, and I am not playing the hero. I am choosing a side, and I am choosing you. Nira stared at him. The bond hummed, a low, resonant frequency that vibrated in her teeth. She could feel his sincerity. It washed over her like a warm tide, eroding her defenses. She stepped in. He stepped in. They stood inches apart. Nira's hands came up to steady herself on his waist. Elias's hands rose to cup her jaw, his thumbs tracing the line of her cheekbones. They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. The air between them was so charged with bioelectric potential that it felt like a storm was about to break. Nira's breath hitched. Her eyes dropped to his mouth, then back up to his eyes. The desire was a physical weight, pressing against her lungs. But beneath the desire was fear, not of the mission, but of this, of being known so completely. We have to go, she whispered, the words trembling. Elias rested his forehead against hers for 1 second. His skin was warm. I know, he whispered back. He pulled away, the loss of contact hitting them both like a physical blow. Nira took a sharp breath, centered herself and hit the final key on the pad. The wall slid open. They stepped into the darkness beneath the gala. The control vault was not a room. It was a cavern carved out of the building's foundation. The air here was frigid, supercooled to keep the massive servers from melting. In the center of the room stood the darkness engine. It was a terrifying piece of machinery, a spinning gyroscope of black metal suspended in a magnetic field. Inside the gyroscope, a singularity of pure night energy was trapped. It looked like a hole in reality, bleeding shadows that dripped onto the floor and scurried away like insects. The floor of the vault was covered in this crawling darkness. It was a defensive measure, a moat of living shadow. Nira stopped at the edge of the platform. We cannot walk across that. It will strip the flesh from our bones. Elias looked at the swirling shadows. They were undulating, reaching up toward the light of the entrance. We have done this before, Elias said. Nira shook her head. Not like this. That was defense. This is immersion. We have to walk through it. We need a full synchronization. She turned to him. The fear was back, sharp and bright. If we do this, Nira said, the bond will deepen. It might not fade when we let go. You will carry the echo of me in your head forever. Elias looked at the engine, then at Nira. He took her hand. Good, he said. I have a terrible memory. I could use the backup. Nira didn't smile, but her eyes softened. She stepped into him. This time, she didn't just press against him. She wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him down. He wrapped his arms around her waist, lifting her slightly so their chests were fused together. Hold me, she commanded. Elias held her. He buried his face in the curve of her neck. He focused on his own heartbeat, slowing it down, offering it to her like a gift. Thump. Thump. Nira caught the rhythm. She wove her biofield into it. The lattice bloomed. It wasn't a flash this time. It was a dawn. A sphere of blinding, white gold light erupted from their joined bodies, expanding outward in a solid wave. The crawling shadows on the floor hissed and evaporated, burned away by the sheer intensity of their connection.
That's crazy.
They stepped off the platform. They walked through the valley of the shadow of death, and they were the light. Elias kept his eyes closed, trusting Nira to guide his feet. He could feel her muscles moving as if they were his own. He felt the sharp focus of her tactical mind overlaying his own thoughts. He felt her love for this city, her hatred for the corruption, and her terrifying, overwhelming need for him. They reached the central console. Nira kept one arm around Elias, maintaining the contact, while she used her free hand to interface with the terminal. The shield flickered but held. She slotted the data key. Accessing Eclipse Latch Master Protocol, she said, her voice sounding double-layered, echoing with the power of the lattice. The screen flashed green. Authorization accepted. She grabbed the master cipher, a physical drive shaped like a cylinder of obsidian. Got it, she said, immediately. The room turned red. Sirens screamed, a physical wall of sound that shattered the quiet intimacy of the bond. The blast doors slammed shut. They were trapped. The main monitor above the console flickered to life. A face appeared. It was Commander Rune. He was sitting in a control room, looking bored. He was not panicked. He was taking notes. Excellent, Rune said. His voice was calm, amplified through the vault speakers. The output readings are off the charts. I told the Senate the human variable was promising, but this is exceptional. Nira stared up at the screen, still clinging to Elias. You knew? Of course I knew. Voss, Rune said. You are a night warden. You do not breathe without me knowing the oxygen count. I let you run. I let you find the human. I needed to test the limits of the lattice with an emotional catalyst. Fear is a good fuel, but love? Love is a nuclear reactor. He leaned forward, his face filling the screen. You have proven the concept. The darkness engine can be stabilized by a bonded pair. We can use this to create a permanent night, controlled by bonded wardens. You have just given us the key to eternal martial law. Nira felt sick. She had thought she was rebelling. She had been researching. Now, Rune said, complete the test. A panel opened in the wall. A single pulse pistol slid out. Eliminate the catalyst, Rune ordered. Kill the human. Nira froze. If you do, Rune continued, your file is wiped. You are reinstated with full honors. You become the commander of the new Night Warden Corps. You survive. Nira looked at the gun. Then she looked at Elias. Elias wasn't looking at the screen. He was looking at her. He didn't pull away. He didn't beg. He stepped back slightly, breaking the lattice but staying within arm's reach. He held his hands out, palms up, open, trusting. He knows you, Elias said to Rune, his voice steady. But he doesn't know us. Nira looked at Elias. She felt the ghost of his heartbeat still thumping in her chest. She looked at Rune, the man who had turned her duty into a cage. She walked over to the gun. She picked it up. It was heavy, cold. Rune smiled. Good soldier. Nira raised the weapon. She aimed it at Elias's chest. Elias didn't flinch. He just watched her, his eyes clear. I am not a soldier, Nira said. She whipped around. She didn't shoot the monitor. She shot the cooling vent of the darkness engine. The bolt hit the thermal regulator. The machine groaned. The magnetic field destabilized. I am a night warden, she shouted, and I am done with the dark. She fired again, shattering the vault's fail-safe locks. Then she jammed the master cipher into the broadcast port. Upload. She screamed at the console. The system rebelled. The data leak began. Not a trickle, but a flood. Above them, in the ballroom, the holographic decorations glitched. The music died. Giant screens that had been showing ambient scenery suddenly replaced the images with the raw code of Project Eclipse. Audio files began to play, recordings of Veyron's Sol ordering the blackouts. In the vault, the darkness engine began to scream. Rune's face on the monitor twisted in fury. "Kill them!" he roared. "Kill them all!" The vault doors began to grind open, but not because Rune opened them, because the building was losing power.
That's crazy.
"Run!" Nira grabbed Elias's hand. They sprinted out of the vault, back through the service corridor.
Probably go.
The gala above was descending into chaos.
No, I'll go, but yeah, I'll FaceTime you.
They could hear the panic thumping through the ceiling. They burst out from behind the curtain into the ballroom. It was bedlam. Senators were scrambling over tables. The Praetorian guards were trying to secure the exits, but the doors were locked by the system crash.
How are you? I'm good.
In the center of the room,
Flash is done.
Princess Salith was gone.
Today.
Her throne was
Let
empty.
me show you.
Nira's earpiece crackled. It was Kiri.
Time-
"Nyra, get out! The night, it is here!" "What?" Nyra shouted, dodging a panicked waiter. "It is not scheduled. They advanced it," Kiri screamed. "And they moved the shields. They are rerouting all power to the Senate floor below. The solarium is unprotected." Nyra looked up. The glass dome above them, the beautiful invisible shield, turned black. The sky fell. The night didn't seep in this time. It crashed in. The glass didn't break, but the shadows passed right through it. A massive, swirling vortex of ink descended into the ballroom. The lights died instantly. The only illumination came from the panic fire of the guards' pulse rifles. The screams were immediate and terrible. The shadow creatures formed instantly, dropping from the ceiling like spiders made of smoke. They landed on the guests. Nira saw Senator Veyron's Sol, the architect of the horror, screaming as a shadow wrapped around his legs and dragged him into the dark. "Elias!" Nira spun around. He was 5 feet away, fighting off a shadow with a serving tray. It was futile. The darkness was eating the metal. Nira sprinted toward him. She didn't have a weapon that worked on this. She only had one thing. "Hold me!" she screamed, her voice tearing through the noise of the slaughter. "Do not let go." She slammed into him. They hit the floor together, rolling under a heavy banquet table as the ballroom became a slaughterhouse. Elias wrapped his arms and legs around her, locking them together in a desperate tangle. Nira pressed her face into his shoulder. The lattice flared. It was blinding. In the pitch-black hell of the ballroom, they became a star. The shadows clawed at the edge of their light. They could feel the cold trying to bite through, the malice of the engine trying to find a weak point in their bond. But the bond was blazing. It was fueled by adrenaline, by defiance, and by the absolute terrifying choice they had made. "We have to move," Nira gasped. "The emergency chute, the waste disposal." Elias laughed hysterically against her neck. "The trash chute? Really? Go!" They scrambled out from under the table, moving as a single glowing unit. The shadows recoiled from their touch. They ran through the screaming crowd, Nira shouting for people to follow them, to get into their light, but the panic was too great. They reached the service alcove. The chute was open. It was a black hole leading down into the bowels of the city. Nira looked back one last time. The ballroom was gone. It was just a swirling vortex of black. "Jump!" she yelled. They threw themselves into the chute. They plummeted through the darkness, sliding down the smooth metal at breakneck speed. They held onto each other with bruising force. The wind roared in their ears. They hit the water hard. It was the underground river, the waste outflow of the upper district. The water was freezing and fast. They surfaced, gasping, still clinging to each other. The current swept them away from the spire, carrying them deep into the lower districts.
Come on, bitch.
The lattice faded as the immediate threat of the night receded, but the heat remained.
It's Batman.
They washed up on a concrete bank miles downstream, coughing up water, shivering violently. Elias rolled onto his back, staring up at the stone ceiling of the tunnel. He was alive. He checked his limbs,
Why doesn't that work?
all there.
Why can't I get shield?
He looked over at Naira.
What the fuck?
She was sitting up, wringing water from her starlight dress. The fabric was ruined, torn and stained with mud. Her armor was gone. She looked small, human, and unbreakable. She looked at him.
Hello.
Her silver eyes were blazing in the gloom. "You okay?" Elias wheezed. Naira didn't answer. She reached out and took his hand. Her grip was iron. The bond hummed between them. No longer a temporary shield, but a permanent, open line. "We started a war," she whispered. Elias squeezed her hand. "About time," he said. The lower district was where the city went to rust. Far below the glittering spires of the Senate and the aurora-threaded sky. The air here tasted of copper and old rain. It was a labyrinth of scrapyards, salvage pits, and neon temples dedicated to forgotten machine gods, lit by flickering holograms that advertised salvation for the low price of spare parts. Nira Voss sat on the edge of a rusted turbine housing, her liquid starlight dress torn and mud-stained, looking like a fallen constellation. She was stripping the ruined casing from a stolen medical scanner, trying to rig it into a biomonitor. Her hands were steady, but Elias could see the tension in her jaw. He stood a few feet away, leaning against a pile of decommissioned droid limbs.
Second, guys.
The silence between them was heavy,
The balance.
not with awkwardness, but with the terrifying weight of what they had shared in the chute. The bond, that illegal resonant frequency connecting their nervous systems, was still humming. Elias could feel it like a second pulse in his wrist. He could feel Nira's frustration as if it were his own headache. "We cannot stay here," Naira said, snapping a wire casing. Her voice was low.
Typist.
"The bond markers are active. Every time your heart rate spikes, I feel it. Every time I get angry, you probably taste metal. We are broadcasting a signal that any specialized tracker can follow." Elias crossed his arms. "So what is the solution? We split up?" Nira looked up. Her silver eyes were hard. "It would be safer for you. I am the defector. You are just the mistake I made along the way." Elias pushed off the droid pile and walked over to her. He crouched down so they were eye level. "Do not rewrite history. Nira, I was there. I saw the way you held that line against the darkness. You did not make a mistake. You made a choice." Nira looked away, staring at the neon reflection in a puddle of oil. "You do not understand. In the Night Warden Corps, intimacy is not just discouraged. It is a crime. 5 years ago, during a breach in Sector 7, I shielded a civilian, a child. I held him until the sun rose. The lattice synchronized because I was desperate to save him." She paused, her fingers tightening on the scanner. "When I returned to base, they stripped me. They put me in isolation for 30 days. They called it unregulated intimacy. They said I was unstable because I allowed my biofield to imprint on a chaotic element. To them, connection is a weakness. It creates a blind spot where loyalty to the state should be." Elias watched her, seeing the cracks in the armor she no longer wore. "They punished you for being human," he said softly,
Dude, I love Fortnite.
"even though you are not." Nira let out a short,
I love it.
bitter breath. "I am a weapon, Elias. That is all I have ever been. And now I am a malfunction." Elias reached out, covering her hand with his. The jolt was immediate, a spark of warmth that traveled up his arm and settled in his chest.
Remember?
"I came here for a story," he admitted. I wanted to expose a political purge and win a journalism award and maybe write a book that would sell enough copies to buy a retirement condo on Mars.
Oh, this is a cute little house.
I looked at you and I saw a headline. The rogue warden, the killer with a conscience. He squeezed her hand. But I cannot write that story anymore, because you are not a headline. You are real, and the people dying up there are real. I am not leaving you to fix this alone. Nira looked at his hand on hers. She didn't pull away. The bond hummed, shifting from a warning siren to a low, steady comfort. You are stubborn, she said. I am relentless, he corrected. It is my best quality. A loud screeching noise interrupted the moment. It sounded like a bag of cats being thrown into a wood chipper. Elias jumped, and Nira instantly grabbed a shard of metal, assuming a combat stance. From the shadows of a nearby alley, a small, cobbled-together drone hovered into view. It was shaped like a trash can lid with a blinking red eye, and it was emitting the horrendous squeal. Behind it walked Kiri, the four-armed Tarlaxian hacker, looking annoyed. "Turn it off!" Kiri shouted at the drone. She smacked the machine with one of her lower hands. The squealing stopped, replaced by a pathetic whimper. "Found you," Kiri said, stepping over a puddle. "You two are not hard to track. You are practically screaming on the emotional spectrum." "It is disgusting." Elias looked at the drone. "What is that?" Kiri patted the machine. "This is a jammer. I built it out of a toaster and a sonic grenade. It scrambles the bond frequency so Rune cannot pinpoint you. It also screams when it gets lonely. It is the saddest robot I have ever met." Nira actually snorted. It was a small, undignified sound that made her look 10 years younger. Kiri looked at Nira, her expression softening. "You look terrible, Voss." "I feel terrible," Nira said, dropping the metal shard. "What is the status of the city?" "Lockdown," Kiri said. "Martial law. Rune is telling everyone that the Gala attack was a terrorist plot by off-world radicals, meaning you, Elias, and he claims you, Nira, were kidnapped and brainwashed. They are painting you as a tragic victim so they do not have to explain why their best hunter turned on them." "And Salith?" Nira asked. "The princess?" Kiri pointed a thumb over her shoulder toward a dilapidated structure that looked like a cross between a cathedral and a warehouse. The sign above the door read, "Temple of the Binary Dawn." "She is inside," Kiri said, "and she has a lot to say." The interior of the neon temple was lit by thousands of blue candles and holographic saints that flickered in and out of existence. In the center of the room, sitting on a crate of relief supplies, was Princess Salith. She was no longer wearing the heavy gold ceremonial robes. She was dressed in rough scavenger clothes, a gray tunic and trousers that swallowed her small frame. Her arm was in a sling, and there was a bandage across her forehead. She looked tired, but her eyes were clear, haunted, but clear. "Your Highness," Nira said, bowing her head instinctively. Salith looked up. "Do not bow, Warden. I am the one who should be kneeling. You saved my life." She gestured for them to come closer. "I saw the broadcast," Salith said. "The leak you forced into the Gala systems. It was only partial, but it was enough to shake the Senate. Varen Sol is furious." "Where is Varen?" Elias asked. "Secure in the bunker beneath the palace," Salith said. "Along with Rune. They are running the government from underground. They have declared a state of eternal vigilance." "It is a coup," Nira said. "No," Salith corrected. "It is the end game." The princess stood up, wincing as she shifted her injured arm. "You asked why they are doing this, why they would massacre their own people. It is not just power, it is fear." The ruling coalition has data, secret projections that show the empire is collapsing economically. Resources are drying up. Several systems are on the verge of revolt. They believe the only way to keep society from fracturing is to terrify the population into total obedience. They are manufacturing a monster so they can be the saviors, Elias said, disgust curling his lip. Exactly, Salith said. If the night is random, people pray. But if the night is a weapon, people obey the hand that holds the hilt. They intend to use Eclipse Latch to target any district that shows signs of dissent. They will erase opposition city by city until only the loyal remain. Nira's hands clenched into fists. We destroyed the vault. We broke the darkness engine. You broke one engine, Salith said quietly. That was a localized generator. The true source, the satellite array that controls the global atmospheric shield, is in orbit. She tapped a map projected onto a dusty table. There is an orbital relay station, the Apex link. It controls the master synchronization for the entire planet's grid. If you can reach it, you can override the blackout protocols manually. You can lock Rune out of the system permanently. How do we get there? Nira asked. The spaceports are locked down. There is another way, Salith said. The royal route. She traced a line on the map that went deep underground, beneath the sewers, beneath the old foundations, leading to a forgotten launch silo in the Badlands. It was built by my ancestors during the First War, Salith explained, a private escape route for the royal family. It has not been used in 200 years. The tunnels are unstable, and the defenses are ancient. They respond to biometric keys. My DNA is not royal, Nira said. No, Salith said. The old tech doesn't read DNA. It reads intent. It reads synchronization. The architects believed that a divided heart could not lead. The doors will only open for two biosignatures that are in perfect harmonic resonance. She looked at Nira, then at Elias. You two are the only ones who can open the path. Elias looked at Nira. The bond. It is a key, Nira realized. We have to go now, Salith said. The next citywide night has been advanced again. Rune is not waiting. He is going to drop the shield over the entire hemisphere in 6 hours to flush you out. 6 hours, Elias said. Impossible. We have bikes, Kiri interrupted. Everyone looked at her. What? Kiri said, shrugging her upper shoulders. I stole 3 grav cycles from a police impound while you were talking. I parked them out back. They are fast, they are loud, and one of them smells like onions. But they fly. The journey to the Badlands was a blur of wind and adrenaline. They rode the grav cycles through the labyrinth of the scrapyards, weaving between mountains of twisted metal and canyons of refuse. Nira took the lead, her body hunched low over the bike, driving with a precision that was terrifying to watch. Elias followed, his knuckles white on the handlebars, trying to keep her taillights in view. Kiri brought up the rear with Salith riding pillion, the sad robot jammer strapped to her back, squealing intermittently against the wind. They left the city limits and entered the Badlands, a desolate expanse of rock and ancient ruins. The entrance to the royal route was a massive circular gate buried in the side of a cliff, covered in vines and moss. It looks like a mouth, Elias yelled over the roar of the engines. Nira dismounted. She walked to the center of the gate. There was no keypad, only a smooth, concave depression in the stone. Salith slid off Kiri's bike. This is it. Place your hands on the stone. Both of you. Nira and Elias stood before the massive door. Ready? Elias asked. Nira nodded. She placed her hand on the stone. Elias placed his hand over hers. Nothing happened. You have to sync, Salith called out. It is not just touch. It is the rhythm. Nira closed her eyes. She reached for the feeling she had in the vault, the feeling she had in the chute. She felt for Elias's heartbeat. Thump, thump. It was fast, erratic. He was afraid. Breathe. Elias, she whispered. I am breathing, he whispered back. I am also standing in front of a giant magic door with an alien super soldier. It is a lot to process. Nira turned her hand, interlacing her fingers with his. She pressed her palm against his palm, skin to skin, pulse to pulse. Focus on me, she said. Just me. Elias looked at her. He saw the smudge of dirt on her cheek. He saw the way her eyelashes caught the light. He stopped thinking about the mission and thought about her. His heart rate slowed. It aligned with hers. The stone beneath their hands grew warm. A low hum vibrated through the ground. Lines of blue light ignited on the surface of the door, spiraling outward from their joined hands. With a groan of shifting earth, the massive stone gears turned. The door split down the middle and rolled open. Show-offs, Kiri muttered. They left the bikes and entered on foot. The tunnels were vast, cylindrical tubes lined with panels that pulsed with a soft, breathing light. The air was stale and cold. As they walked, the environment began to change. The gravity in the tunnel fluctuated. At times they felt heavy, dragging their feet. Moments later, they were nearly floating, their boots barely touching the floor. It is the old generators, Salith said. They are failing. We need to hurry. They reached a central chamber, a spherical room with exits in all directions. The center of the room was dominated by a suspended bridge that rotated slowly. Suddenly, the lights in the tunnel turned red. A high-pitched ping echoed through the chamber. Kiri frantically pulled the jammer off her back. It was smoking. The jammer! Kiri yelled. It burned out. Nira spun around. The bond, it triggered a location ping when we opened the door. From the tunnel they had just exited, a sleek black dropship roared into view. It didn't land. It hovered, its cannons tracking them. Run! Run! Nira shouted. They sprinted across the rotating bridge. The dropship opened fire. Lasers scorched the metal plating at their heels. Rune's voice boomed over the ship's speakers. You cannot outrun your own nature. Voss, you are a beacon. The bridge shuddered. An explosion rocked the tunnel, destroying the stabilizer gears. Gravity failed. The room flipped. The floor became the ceiling. The ceiling became the wall. Elias, who had been running toward the exit, was thrown into the air. He flailed, drifting helplessly toward the dropship's intake fans. Elias, Nira screamed. She didn't reach for a weapon. She reached for the wall, engaging her magnetic boots, the only piece of armor she had managed to scavenge. She anchored herself to the ceiling, now floor. She reached out. Elias, grab my hand. Elias stretched, his fingertips brushing hers. He was drifting away. Nira didn't let him go. She pulsed the lattice. She didn't care if Rune saw it. She didn't care if the whole galaxy saw it. She sent a surge of pure, desperate need down the bond. Come back. The bioelectric field flared around her hand like a grappling hook. It caught Elias's biofield. It yanked him through the zero-gravity vacuum. His hand slapped into hers. She gripped his wrist, her muscles straining, and pulled him down to the surface beside her. He crashed into her, wrapping his arms around her waist to anchor himself. Thanks for the lift. He gasped. Nira didn't smile. She dragged him toward the exit hatch. Kiri and Salith were already there, clinging to a ladder. They scrambled through the hatch just as the dropship fired a missile into the chamber. The explosion sealed the tunnel behind them, burying the room in tons of rock. They collapsed in the next corridor. The gravity here was stable. They were alive. But they were trapped. This is a dead end, Kiri said, checking her data pad. This leads to the sealed archives. The launch silo is on the other side. There is a door, Salith said, pointing to a massive, seamless wall of obsidian. It was identical to the first one, but smaller, more intimate. It requires a higher synchronization, Salith said, her voice shaking. The first door was for entry. This door is for the inner sanctum. It demands total resonance. Nira looked at the door. She could hear the shadows leaking through the cracks in the rock behind them. Rune's forces were drilling through the rubble. We have minutes, Nira said. She turned to Elias. We have to do it again. Elias nodded. He looked terrified. They stepped up to the door. They placed their hands on the surface. Nothing happened. It is not working, Elias said. It is not just a heartbeat, Salith urged. It is the mind. You have to lower the walls. All of them. Nira looked at Elias. She had spent her whole life building walls. She was a fortress. Opening the gates meant letting him see everything, the fear, the shame, the belief that she was unlovable. I can't, she whispered. If I let you in, you will see what I am. A weapon, a killer. Elias turned to her. He took her face in his hands, ignoring the door. I see you. Nira. I have seen you since the roof. You are not a weapon. You are the person who saved me. You are the person who saves everyone. He leaned his forehead against hers. I am just a guy with a camera, he said, his voice cracking. I have spent my whole life watching things happen to other people. I never participated and I never stayed. I was always the outsider. I am terrified that if I stay, I will just get you killed. He took a breath. But I am not leaving. I am choosing this. I am choosing you. Not to survive, but because I want to be with you. Nira looked into his eyes. She felt the truth of his words vibrating through the bond. It wasn't a tactical decision, it was a vow. She closed her eyes. She imagined the walls of her fortress coming down, stone by stone. She let him feel her fear. She let him feel her hope. I choose you too, she thought, projecting the thought with every ounce of her will. The air in the corridor changed. It grew heavy, charged with static. The obsidian door didn't just open when it dissolved. The stone turned into mist, reacting to the sheer, overwhelming power of their resonance. They fell through the opening, stumbling into the chamber beyond. It was an ancient transit station. A sleek, silver bullet train sat on a magnetic rail, humming with dormant power. We made it, Kiri shouted. But as they ran toward the train, the rock wall behind them exploded. Rune burst through the dust, flanked by two elite shadow troopers. He didn't fire at Nira. He fired a capture net at Salith. The weighted net wrapped around the princess, pinning her to the ground. Salith, Elias shouted, turning back. Halt, Rune commanded. He held a detonator in his hand. The net around Salith beeped. One step, and she burns, Rune said. Nira froze. Elias froze. Rune walked forward, dragging the struggling princess up by her collar. He looked at Nira with cold satisfaction. A trade, Voss. I am a reasonable man. Give me the human. You can take the princess and go. I do not care about her, but she is a figurehead. But him, he is the catalyst. He is the danger.
Where is he?
Nira looked at Salith. The princess was shaking, her eyes wide with terror. Do it, Salith whispered. Save the city. Nira looked at Elias. Elias looked at the train, then at Salith, then at Nira. He saw the calculation in Rune's eyes. He knew that if he surrendered, Rune would kill him and then kill Nira anyway.
From here.
But maybe, just maybe, it would buy them time to launch the train. He stepped forward. Okay, no, Nira shouted. Elias looked at her. Naira, it is the mission. You need to stop the knight, and you cannot do that if he kills the princess.
Scared.
I am not trading lives, Naira snarled. She stormed over to Elias, grabbing the lapels of his jacket and yanking him back. You do not get to decide my choices for me. Elias Kane, I am not losing you. She turned to Rune. Her eyes were glowing with the residual energy of the bond.
Should we eat?
You want a catalyst? She asked. Here is one. She didn't attack Rune. She grabbed the sad robot jammer from Kiri's hands, which was sparking and smoking, and hurled it at the magnetic rail of the train. The jammer hit the third rail. It shorted out with a massive, blinding arc of electricity. The surge backlashed into the room's systems. The lights blew out. The gravity stabilizers failed again. For a second, everyone was weightless. Nira didn't hesitate. She grabbed Elias and Kiri and kicked off the wall, launching them toward the open door of the train.
Took my jetpack.
Rune, caught off guard, lost his grip on the detonator as he floated upward. Salith, still in the net, drifted toward the tunnel ceiling. Naira! Salith screamed. Go, get the codes! Naira reached for her, but the distance was too great. The emergency gravity kicked back in. They slammed into the train car. Naira hit the manual override. The doors hissed shut. Through the window, she saw Rune land on his feet. He grabbed Salith's net and dragged her back into the shadows. The train engines roared to life, fed by the surge from the shorted rail. It rocketed forward, diving into the launch tube. Nira threw herself against the window, watching Salith disappear into the dark. We lost her, she whispered,
This is what this is.
devastated.
I'm practicing.
Elias pulled her away from the window. He held her shoulders, his face grim.
See, I don't know. I deleted
We
my
didn't
phone
lose
for
her,
Fortnite.
he said fiercely.
Dude,
We just raised the stakes.
you're a real
He
one.
pulled the access code Salith had given them from his
What are you
pocket.
eating on?
We are going to that station. We are going to kill the knight, and then we are coming back for her. The train accelerated, pressing them into the floor, carrying them upward toward the stars and the final battle.
Should've
The
got
bond
food.
between them was no longer a hum.
Food with my
It was a roar. The stolen skiff was an orbital debris hauler that smelled violently of burnt hydraulic fluid and unwashed cargo netting. It shuddered as it hit the upper atmosphere, the metal hull groaning under the stress of a climb it was never designed to make. Inside the cramped cockpit, Kiri was piloting with all four hands, her fingers flying across a dashboard that was half taped together. Stop touching that, Kiri screeched, slapping Elias's hand away from a blinking blue toggle. I was trying to stabilize the yaw. Elias shouted back, gripping the co-pilot's chair as the ship bucked like a wild animal. The display says we are drifting 4 degrees to port. That is the cargo release. You hairless ape, Kiri yelled, her voice pitching up into a squeak of genuine offense. If you press that, we drop the engine core and become a very expensive meteor. Sit on your hands. Elias held up his hands in surrender. I am helping. This is me helping.
How do I?
You are helping me develop an ulcer, Kiri muttered, banking the ship hard to the right. Naira sat in the jump seat behind them, checking her weapons. She was silent, her eyes fixed on the view screen. The curvature of the planet was falling away beneath them, a vast marble of swirling clouds and bruised violet light. Ahead of them, hanging in the black void of space like a spider in a web of stars, was the apex link. It was a massive structure, a ring of silver metal rotating slowly around a central spire. But it wasn't the station itself that made Naira's blood turn to ice. It was what was attached to it. Surrounding the station were 6 colossal towers, hooked into the station's power grid like leeches. They were funneling a substance that looked like liquid ink, pure, concentrated night energy. Look at them, Nira whispered. Darkness siphons. Elias looked up, his humor vanishing. They are harvesting it. It is not just a weapon, Naira said, her voice hollow. It is fuel. They create the terror on the surface, harvest the energy it generates, and use it to power the very station that controls the shield. It is a closed loop. They made fear into a renewable resource. She felt a wave of nausea. All her life, she had believed the Night Wardens were the thin blue line between civilization and chaos. Now she realized they were just ranch hands, herding the population into the slaughterhouse to keep the lights on for the elite. "We are coming up on the maintenance sector," Kiri announced, her tone sharpening. "I am going to match the station's rotation. It is going to be bumpy. Elias,
Look at this.
if you vomit on my console, I will eject you." "I have a stomach of steel," Elias said, though he looked green. Kiri slammed the thrusters. The skiff shuddered violently, metal screaming against metal as she forced the docking clamps to engage with a rusted service airlock. There was a deafening clang, then a hiss of pressure equalization. "We are in." Kiri exhaled, slumping back in her chair. "I am going to stay here and keep the engines hot, and I will try to hack the internal sensors so they do not see you coming." "You are staying?" Elias asked. "Someone has to be the getaway driver," Kiri said, "and frankly, I am allergic to getting shot. Go, save the princess. Try not to die." Naira stood up. She placed a hand on Kiri's shoulder. "Thank you,
What the heck?
Kiri." Kiri waved a hand dismissively, but her lower eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of emotion. "Just get back here, Voss, or I am billing your ghost for the fuel." Naira and Elias moved to the airlock. Naira cycled the hatch, and they stepped into the belly of the beast. The interior of the Apex Link was not the sterile military environment Naira expected. It was alive. The walls were lined with bioluminescent panels that pulsed in a rhythmic, organic beat. The floor was a soft, synthetic mesh that seemed to grip their boots. The air was warm and humid, smelling of ozone and something sweet, like rotting flowers. "It reacts to neurochemistry," Nira warned, keeping her voice low. "This station uses psionic conducive circuitry to process the night energy. It reads emotion." As she spoke, the lights in the corridor flared a harsh, anxious yellow, reacting to her tension. "Great," Elias whispered. "So if we get scared, the hallway knows?" "If we get scared, the security system knows," Naira corrected. "We have to control ourselves. Keep your heart rate down. Keep your mind clear." "That is a tall order." "Nira," Elias said. "Considering we are walking into a trap." They moved deeper into the station, avoiding the main concourses. The bond between them was humming loudly in this environment. The station's architecture acted like an amplifier. Nira could feel Elias's presence in her mind not just as a sensation, but as a roar. She felt his fear, his determination, and the constant underlying current of his focus on her. It was distracting. It was intoxicating. They reached a junction near the central spire. A blast door blocked their path. Nira knelt to hack the panel, her fingers moving swiftly. Elias stood guard, watching the corridor. He looked at her back, at the way the muscles in her neck tensed. "Nira," he said softly. She didn't look up. Almost got it. "If we make it through this," Elias said, "if we stop the broadcast and save Salith and somehow get off this station without being turned into space dust." "What then?"
I thought about it.
Nira paused. The panel beeped, turning green, but she didn't open the door. She stayed kneeling. "I do not know," she said. "I am serious," Elias said. "You are a fugitive. I am a wanted man. We can't exactly go back to our apartments." Nira stood up and turned to face him. The corridor lights softened to a deep, melancholy blue, reflecting her internal state. She looked at him, this human who had crashed into her life and dismantled her defenses with nothing but bad jokes and stubbornness. I want to stop running, she said, her voice shaking slightly. I want to wake up in a place where the sky doesn't turn black. I want. She stepped closer to him. The bond flared, sending a shiver through both of them. I want a life where I do not have to earn the right to be loved, she whispered, where I do not have to be a shield or a sword. I just want to be. Elias looked at her, his expression shattering. He reached out, his hands cupping her face, his thumbs brushing away a smudge of grease on her cheek. You have that, he said. You have that right now. He pulled her in. It wasn't a desperate collision like before. It was slow. It was deliberate. He wrapped his arms around her and she buried her face in his chest, gripping his jacket. They held each other with a force that threatened to crack ribs. The station around them reacted. The lights in the walls shifted from blue to a warm, pulsing gold. The air seemed to hum with a harmonic resonance. For a moment, they weren't soldiers or spies. They were just two terrified things finding an anchor in the void. Nira breathed him in, the scent of rain and leather that he still carried. The scent of earth. She stored the memory away, locking it in the deepest part of her mind. She pulled back, her hands lingering on his arms. We finished this first, she said, her voice firm again. Elias nodded, his eyes bright. First we save the world, then we figure out breakfast. Nira hit the door release. The blast door slid open. The ceremonial chamber was a vast, circular amphitheater located at the very top of the spire. One wall was entirely transparent, looking out over the planet below. The other walls were lined with banks of machinery and tiers of seating, currently empty. In the center of the room, on a raised dais, was a device that looked like a throne made of needles. Princess Salith was strapped into it. She was unconscious, her head lolling forward. Cables were jacked into the ports on her ceremonial suit, connecting her nervous system directly to the station's mainframe. Standing over her were Senator Varen Saul and Commander Rune. Varen was dressed in immaculate white robes, checking a data pad. Rune was in full combat armor, his helmet off, looking bored. Floating around them were drone cameras, their red recording lights blinking. We are live in 2 minutes, Varen said, his voice echoing in the chamber. Is the script loaded? Rune checked the monitor. The script is ready. The princess will confess that her frailty allowed the night to breach the lower districts. She will beg the Senate to initiate the total protocol. I will activate the defense grid, heroically saving the city, while we simultaneously purge the slums. And the energy harvest? Varen asked. Rune smirked. The terror spike from the lower districts will power the grid for a decade. It is efficient. Nira and Elias crouched behind a bank of servers near the entrance. They are using her as a trigger, Nira hissed. When the broadcast starts, they will force a surge through her nervous system to drop the shield. It will fry her brain. We need to cut the feed, Elias said. Nira tapped her earpiece. Kiri, are you reading this? I see them. Kiri's voice crackled in her ear. I am trying to hijack the signal, but Varen has military-grade encryption. I need a physical connection to the central node. Where is the node? Nira asked. Directly under the dais, Kiri said. Nira looked at the room. It was open ground. There was no cover. I will draw their fire, Nira said. You get to the node? Elias grabbed her arm. That is suicide. Rune is an elite. I am better, Nira said. She didn't wait for an argument. She stood up and stepped out from behind the servers. She didn't sneak. She walked into the center of the room, her boots ringing on the metal floor. The golden light of the station's reaction to her bond still clung to her like a faint aura. The cameras turned toward her. Varen Sol, she shouted, her voice cutting through the air. Varen spun around, his politician's smile vanishing. Rune dropped his hand to his weapon. "Officer Voss," Varen said, recovering quickly. He looked at the cameras. "Citizens, behold, the traitor has returned to finish her crime." Naira kept walking. "I am no traitor, and I am not alone." She held up the master cipher they had stolen from the gala. "This is the key to Project Eclipse," she announced, looking directly into the nearest camera drone. "The night is not a weather event. It is a weapon, and these men are the ones pulling the trigger." Rune roared, "Cut the feed! Kill her!" Security doors slammed open. A dozen guards in black armor flooded the room. "Now! Elias!" Naira shouted. She ignited her baton and charged. The room erupted into chaos. Rune fired his pulse rifle, sending bolts of red energy scorching across the floor. Naira slid underneath the volley, coming up in a fluid arc to strike a guard in the throat. Elias sprinted from cover, keeping his head down. He wasn't a soldier, but he was fast. He slid across the polished floor, aiming for the maintenance panel beneath the dais. A guard spotted him. "Target the human." Elias scrambled, fumbling with his belt. He pulled out a magnetic grapple gun he had swiped from the skiff. He fired it blindly. The grapple hit the zero-gravity controls on the wall. "Oops," Elias muttered. He yanked the cord. The switch flipped. The gravity in the chamber vanished. Everyone left the floor. Varen let out a very undignified squeak as he floated toward the ceiling. The guards flailed, their heavy armor suddenly a liability as they spun out of control. Naira didn't flail. She had trained for zero-G. She kicked off a floating console, propelling herself like a missile toward Rune. They collided in mid-air. It was a brutal, silent ballet. Rune tried to bring his rifle to bear, but Naira grabbed the barrel, twisting it aside. She used his momentum against him, spinning them both around and slamming him into a wall. Elias, meanwhile, had activated his magnetic boots. He walked along the floor, which was now technically just another wall, while everyone else floated. He reached the node. He jammed Kiri's data spike into the port. "Kiri, you are in," he shouted. "I have it." Kiri's voice screamed in his ear. "I am broadcasting." On every screen in the city below, on billboards, wristcoms, and home viewers. The feed shifted. Varen's scripted speech was replaced by the raw data of the conspiracy. Audio files played. Maps of the harvest zones appeared. In the chamber, Varen saw the monitors change. "No!" he screamed, paddling helplessly in the air. "Stop it!" Rune kicked Naira away, pushing off the wall to stabilize himself. He saw the broadcast, his face twisted in pure, cold rage. "If we cannot rule the city," he snarled, "then we will break it." He reached into his belt and pulled out a remote detonator. He didn't aim for the city. He aimed for the siphons outside. He pressed the button. A deep, resonant boom shook the entire station. The darkness siphons on the exterior hull didn't just turn off. They inverted. The containment field shattered. The massive reservoirs of concentrated night energy were released. But they didn't fall to the planet. The vacuum of the breach sucked them inside. The transparent wall of the chamber cracked. "Naira!" Elias yelled, looking up from the node. The glass shattered. The night poured in. It wasn't like the shadows in the ballroom. This was the source. It was a tsunami of absolute zero. It flooded the room, freezing the air, turning the floating guards into statues of ice and ash in seconds. The gravity stabilizers shorted out again, returning the room to normal weight. Everyone fell to the floor. Elias hit the ground hard. He scrambled backward as the tide of darkness rushed toward him. Naira landed in a crouch near the dais. She saw the darkness consuming the room. She saw Salith, still strapped to the chair, the black tide rising toward her boots. "We cannot fight this," Elias shouted. "It is too much." Naira looked at him. She saw the terror in his eyes. She felt it in her own chest. But she also felt the bond. It was still there, a thin golden thread in the encroaching black.
I'm gonna hide right here.
We do not fight it, she said. We push it back. She reached out her hand.
Wait, is this where the circle
Elias. Elias saw her. He understood. He ran to her. He didn't care about the shadows nipping at his heels. He launched himself up the steps of the dais. Nira caught him. If you want to survive this night, hold me, she screamed. They slammed together. This time, there was no hesitation, no awkwardness. They locked their bodies together, chest to chest, forehead to forehead. Nira wrapped her legs around his waist, burying her face in his neck. Elias gripped her so hard his fingers bruised her skin. They didn't just sync their heartbeats. They opened the floodgates. Nira poured everything she was into the lattice. Her years of loneliness, her rage at Rune, her desperate hope for a future. Elias poured in his love, his stubborn belief in her, his refusal to be a bystander.
Wait, how many people?
The lattice didn't just
9
bloom.
or 8?
It detonated.
I don't get it.
A shockwave of blinding, solid light erupted from them. It was a physical force. It hit the incoming tide of darkness and shattered it. The shadows screamed as they were incinerated. The light expanded, filling the chamber, pushing the night back out through the broken window. Inside the bubble of light,
Oh, shit.
it was silent. Elias kept his hands steady on her back, even as the reality outside their shield warped and tore. Stay with me, he whispered against her skin. Always, she breathed. They moved toward the throne. The light moved with them. Nira reached out with one hand, keeping the other locked on Elias.
Oh my God.
She ripped the cables from Salith's suit. The princess gasped, her eyes flying open. She saw the light. She saw Nira and Elias fuse together, glowing like a binary star. The connection to the mainframe was severed. Salith slumped forward. Elias caught her with one arm, sandwiching her between them so she was inside the shield.
What is this?
The broadcast was still live.
What gun is this?
Kiri was still transmitting. Salith looked at the floating camera drone, which had miraculously survived inside their light. She grabbed the microphone attached to the dais. People of Calum, she screamed, her voice raw. On the screens below, the city saw their princess, battered and held upright by a glowing night warden and a human. There is no natural night, Salith cried. It is a lie. Rune and Varen are feeding you to the dark to keep their power.
My
I am Princess Salith, and I command you, tear down the siphons, rise up, run! Who had taken cover behind a shielded console, roared in fury. He stood up. He had lost his rifle. He pulled a serrated combat knife. He didn't care about the darkness. He didn't care about the shield. He charged through the edge of the light, his armor smoking as the lattice burned him.
victory, Mama, son.
Die! He screamed, lunging for Salith. Nira saw him. She couldn't use her weapon. Her hands were holding the shield. She couldn't move Elias or Salith. She made the only choice she had.
Fucking crazy.
She twisted her body, breaking the perfect symmetry of the hold just enough to rotate. She put her back between the knife and the princess.
So much for the follow.
The blade drove home.
Oh my
It
God.
pierced the gap in her ruined armor, sinking deep into her side.
Crazy.
Nira gasped, her body seizing.
Still learning.
The lattice flickered,
My
the light
fucking
dimming dangerously.
goodness.
No! Elias screamed. He didn't let go of her.
I cried the
He
first
grabbed
time.
Rune's wrist with his free hand, adrenaline giving him hysterical strength. He twisted the commander's arm, hearing the bones snap. Run howled, dropping the knife. Elias kicked him, a savage, desperate kick to the chest. Rune stumbled back, falling out of the circle of light. The darkness waiting outside surged. It grabbed Rune. He didn't even have time to scream before the shadows swarmed him,
So I cannot-
dissolving his armor, his flesh, his scream into nothingness.
Holy shit.
Nira sagged in Elias's arms. The light was fading.
Oh my God.
The wound was bad. Nira!
In the middle,
Elias choked out.
side right
Stay with me. Do not fade.
corner.
Nira looked up at him. Her silver eyes were hazy.
Thank you.
The lattice
I think I
is
needed that.
destabilizing.
I wasn't really feeling
We
like
are
it
leaving.
recently.
Elias shouted. He grabbed Salith's arm. Help me. Together, they hauled Naira up. The station was groaning around them. The structural integrity was failing. The darkness was chewing through the walls. Kiri! Elias screamed into his earpiece. We are coming out! I am at the breach, Kiri shouted back. The whole station is breaking apart. You have 30 seconds. Elias swept Naira up into his arms. She was heavy, dead weight, bleeding onto his borrowed suit. He ran. He ran through the collapsing corridor, dodging falling debris. Salith ran beside him, using a discarded blaster to shoot out the locking mechanisms of the doors. Left, Kiri shouted in his ear. Go left! Now jump! They reached the airlock. The skiff was there, engines screaming. They threw themselves inside. Kiri didn't wait for the hatch to seal. She punched the thrusters. The skiff shot away from the station like a bullet. Behind them, the apex link groaned. The central spire cracked. The harvested night energy ignited. The station exploded in a silent, blinding blossom of black and violet fire. Elias didn't watch the explosion. He was on the floor of the skiff, holding Naira. She was pale. Her breathing was shallow. The bond was faint, a dying echo in his mind. Nira, he whispered, pressing his hand over the wound. You promised. You said we'd figure out breakfast. Nira's eyes fluttered open. She looked at him, and a faint, bloody smile touched her lips. I like pancakes, she whispered. Then her eyes closed and the bond went silent. Elias screamed her name, but the only answer was the hum of the engines carrying them back to a world that was burning. The stolen skiff hit the atmosphere of the lower district like a stone skipping across water, smoke trailing from its starboard engine in a long, black ribbon. Kiri fought the controls with all four hands, cursing in 3 different languages as the skyline of the capital rushed up to meet them. Brace for impact, Kiri shouted, her voice pitching high with panic. And by brace, I mean find something soft and pray to whatever deity handles aerodynamics. They slammed into a reclamation yard near the river, skidding through mounds of scrap metal and rusted hulls before coming to a grinding, sparking halt against the shell of an ancient transport hauler. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the hiss of cooling hydraulics and the distant, terrifying wail of sirens. Elias unbuckled his harness with shaking hands. He ignored the bruise forming on his forehead and scrambled to the rear of the cockpit where Naira lay slumped in the jump seat. Her face was the color of ash, the violet markings on her skin fading to a dull gray. The wound in her side, where Rune's blade had pierced the armor, was cauterized but deep, and her breathing was shallow. Nira, Elias whispered, his hands hovering over her. She opened her eyes. They were hazy. The silver irises clouded. The bond between them, usually a humming wire of connection, felt like static, a radio signal lost in a storm. The lattice had been pushed beyond its limits, fueled by too much adrenaline and too much terror. And now her nervous system was crashing. We are not done, Nira rasped, trying to sit up. She winced, a sharp intake of breath that sounded like tearing paper. You are done, Elias said, gently pushing her back. You lost a lot of blood. The station is gone. The broadcast is out. We won. We did not win, Salith said from the hatch. The princess stood framed in the opening, looking out at the city. The sky above the capital was not clearing. It was boiling. The destruction of the orbital station had not stopped the night. It had broken the dam. The fail-safes were gone. Varen's soul, desperate and cornered in the bunker beneath the palace, had triggered the final protocol. It was a punishment. If the Senate could not rule, they would burn the kingdom to ash. Elias joined Salith at the hatch. The view was apocalyptic. The artificial aurora was gone. replaced by a churning vortex of black clouds that descended like a ceiling of solid lead. In the streets below, the shadows were not just hunting, they were swarming. The darkness moved like a tide, washing over entire blocks, snuffing out the lights of the resistance. But the people were fighting back. Emboldened by Salith's broadcast, citizens were pouring into the streets with improvised torches, flares, and jury-rigged floodlights. They were forming human chains of light, pushing back the dark, but they were losing ground. "They are going to die," Elias said, his voice tight. "All of them." "Not if we reach the heart grid," Salith said. Her voice was no longer that of a frightened girl, it was steel, the central core under the palace. "It is the hard line for the planetary atmosphere. If we can interface with it, we can rewrite the night protocols manually. We can shut it down forever." Kiri kicked open a jammed panel, grabbing a medkit. "The heart grid. That is a myth. It is supposed to be an old terraforming engine. It is real," Salith said, "and it is the only thing powerful enough to override Varen's command." Naira struggled to her feet, leaning heavily against the bulkhead. "Then we go." Elias turned to her. "You can barely stand. You cannot fight through a city of shadows." "I do not have to fight," Naira said. "I just have to walk." Elias moved to stop her, his instinct to protect overwhelming his logic. He grabbed her shoulders. "Naira, please, look at you. You are destroying yourself. I cannot watch you die. I won't let you." Naira looked at him, and for a moment, the bond flared with a sharp, clear note of frustration. She gripped his wrists, her fingers weak but her gaze steady. "Listen to me. Elias Kane." She stepped closer, forcing him to look into her eyes. "You want to save me. I feel it. It is a warm, suffocating blanket in my mind. But love is not keeping someone in a box so they do not get hurt. That is possession. That is what the Senate does to this city." She took a breath, fighting the pain. Love is not sacrifice by force. It is not erasing yourself to keep the other person whole. It is choosing to stand next to them in the fire. It is choosing us, even if it breaks us. Elias stared at her. He felt the truth of it vibrating through the static of the bond. He realized he had been trying to be a hero, to be the shield, when what she needed was a partner. He let out a long, shaky breath. He nodded. "Okay," he said. We walk into the fire. They moved through the city like ghosts. Salith used her royal clearance codes to bypass the few remaining automated defenses, while Kiri jammed the tracking signals of the hunter-killer drones patrolling the sky. The streets were a war zone. They saw night wardens, those who had seen the broadcast and defected, fighting back-to-back with civilians, their shields flaring against the encroaching dark. They saw the shadow swarms tearing through barricades, driven by a chaotic, mindless hunger. They reached the service entrance to the palace catacombs, a heavy blast door concealed behind a decorative fountain in the central plaza. Salith punched in the code. The door hissed, but didn't open. "Varen has locked down the sub-levels," Salith said, panic edging into her voice. Kiri cracked her knuckles, all 20 of them. "Move over, Your Highness. Let the professional work." She plugged her datapad into the panel. "This encryption is archaic. It is like they wanted someone to break in. Or..." The door groaned and slid open. "Or they are inviting us in." Naira finished. They descended into the dark. The architecture changed as they went deeper. The sterile metal of the Senate levels gave way to something older, stone fused with amber-colored circuitry, walls that hummed with a low biological rhythm. This was the foundation of the city, built by the architects who had first settled the planet thousands of years ago. The heart grid chamber lay at the end of a long, suspended bridge over a chasm of pure energy. They stopped at the entrance. It was a massive archway that shimmered with a field of containment energy. "This is it," Salith said. "The core is inside, but the interface, it was designed for the builders. Their physiology was different, dual-chambered minds." She looked at Naira and Elias. A single mind cannot handle the data stream. It will burn out the synapses in seconds. To rewrite the protocol, you need two minds processing in perfect synchronization, a bonded pair. Naira looked at the archway. "And the risk?" "Neural overload," Salith admitted softly. "Permanent imprinting. You might not be able to untangle your minds afterward. You could lose the ability to tell where one of you ends and the other begins." Elias took Naira's hand. The static in the bond smoothed out. It became a steady, rhythmic drumbeat. "I have been lost before," Elias said. "I don't mind being lost with you." Kiri sniffled loudly, wiping her lower eyes. "You two are impossibly dramatic. If you die in there, I am billing your ghosts for the skiff repairs." Naira actually smiled. It was weak, but it was real. "Put it on my tab," Naira said. She turned to Elias. She didn't have to ask. Together, they stepped through the containment field. The chamber of the heart grid was a cathedral of light and shadow. It was a spherical room, massive enough to hold a starship. In the center hung the core, a crystalline structure the size of a house, pulsating with a gentle, verdant light. But surrounding it, strangling it, were black cables and machinery grafted onto the crystal like tumors. This was the Senate's modification, the corruption that turned a terraforming engine into a torture device. The air here felt thick, charged with the memories of a planet that remembered being green. Naira realized the truth instantly. The night was not a weapon originally. It was a sleep cycle. The builders had used it to rest the biosphere, a programmed period of darkness and regeneration to heal the ecosystem. The Senate had taken a tool of healing and sharpened it into a knife. "Welcome home, Officer Voss." The voice echoed from the shadows beneath the core. A figure stepped out. It was Rune. He was not the man they had fought on the station. He was a ruin. Half of his face was a burn scar. The flesh fused with the melted remnants of his helmet. His armor was shattered, revealing skin that pulsed with black veins. He had not just survived the fall into the darkness. He had consumed it. Or it had consumed him. He was held together by the very energy he sought to control. "Commander," Naira said, her voice steady. "You look unwell." "I have never been clearer," Rune rasped. He walked toward them, limping, trailing wisps of shadow. "You think you can stop this? You think a broadcast and a few riots change the nature of power?" He gestured to the core. "Civilization is a fragile thing, Voss. It requires fear to hold its shape. Without the night, without the threat, these people will tear themselves apart. I am the only thing keeping the Empire from collapsing into anarchy." "That is not peace," Naira said, stepping forward, placing herself between Rune and the others. "That is a slow execution. You are not saving the city. You are just managing the graveyard." Rune laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "Then let us bury it together." He raised his hand. The shadows in the corners of the room surged forward, forming lances of solid darkness. Salith stepped up, raising a pulse pistol she had taken from the skiff. "No," she said. Rune looked at the princess with contempt. "You are a child playing with fire." "I am the queen," Salith said, "and I relieve you of duty." She fired. The bolt hit Rune in the chest, but the shadows absorbed it. He didn't even flinch. He swiped his hand. and a wave of force knocked Salith and Kiri backward, pinning them against the wall.
Fuck.
He turned his focus to Nira and Elias. "Connect to the grid," Run sneered. "Go ahead. Let us see if your love is strong enough to hold back the tide." He was goading them. He wanted them to try, believing they would burn. Nira looked at Elias. "Now," she whispered. They ran for the interface console at the base of the core. Rune did not stop them. He watched with the arrogance of a god. Nira placed her hands on the panel. Elias placed his hands over hers. They looked at each other one last time. "I am terrified," Elias confessed, his voice trembling.
Oh shit.
"I know," Nira said. "I am here. Just you. Just me. What do you want?" "Nira," he asked, echoing the question from the station. "I want you," she said fiercely. "Not as a symbol, not as a survival strategy. Just you." They closed their eyes. They let the walls drop. The connection was instant and violent. It wasn't a stream, it was an ocean. Nira felt Elias's entire life crash into hers. His childhood on a rainy planet. His loneliness in crowded rooms. The moment he saw her on the roof and thought she was the most beautiful, terrifying thing he had ever seen. Elias felt her pain. He felt the cold metal of her upbringing, the silence of her barracks, the deep, aching wish to be soft without being weak. They merged. The room exploded with light. The heart grid accepted the dual biosignature. The bond became the code. The chaotic, jagged programming of the weaponized night met the stable, harmonic frequency of their connection. Rune screamed. The light was burning him. The shadows clinging to his body began to evaporate.
Oh god, I gotta go.
"No!" he roared. "It is chaos. It is weakness." He charged at them, a monster of smoke and hate. Nira and Elias could not move. They were the circuit. If they broke contact, the rewrite would fail. Rune raised a blade of condensed shadow, aiming for Nira's exposed back. "I deny you," Salith screamed. The princess, bruised and battered, threw herself from the wall. She didn't fire her weapon. She tackled Rune. It was a suicidal move. She slammed into him, knocking him off balance just as he struck. The shadow blade missed Nira by an inch, slicing into the interface console. Sparks flew. Rune turned on Salith, grabbing her by the throat. "You ungrateful little..." But the impact had pushed them both onto the edge of the chasm, directly into the path of the collapsing siphon field that the grid was purging. The floor beneath them gave way. Salith scrambled back, her fingers clawing at the stone. Rune tried to anchor himself with shadows, but the light from Nira and Elias was too bright. It dissolved his grip. He looked at Nira one last time, his eyes wide with the realization that he had been beaten not by firepower, but by something he couldn't quantify. Rune fell. He plummeted into the raw energy of the planet's core, screaming as the light unmade him. Salith pulled herself up to the ledge, gasping for air. At the console, the process reached critical mass. Nira and Elias were glowing. Their physical forms seemed to blur, their edges dissolving into pure luminance. They were merging passion with danger, literally. Their emotional state was the algorithm. The love they held for each other became the stabilizing lattice for the entire planet. Rewrite complete. The voice of the system was calm, female, and ancient. The black cables strangling the core turned to dust. The violet, bruised light of the crystal shifted to a brilliant, healing gold. Above ground, the miracle happened. The swirling vortex of the final night didn't just vanish, it unraveled. The terrified citizens looked up as the crushing darkness softened. The shadows that were hunting them lost their cohesion and drifted apart like mist in the morning sun. The sky turned a soft, twilight blue. A gentle rain began to fall, not acid, not sorrow, but clean, warm rain. The biometric scanners in the city streets, usually red with warnings, turned green. The grid began to repair the infrastructure, knitting cracked pavement and sealing broken windows. It was the true night, the healing cycle. In the chamber, the light faded. Nira and Elias collapsed. They fell together, a tangle of limbs on the cold stone floor. They lay there for a long time, breathing in the silence. "Elias?" Nira whispered. "Yeah?" Elias croaked. "Are you? Elias checked his mind. He could still feel her. She was a permanent resident in his thoughts now. A warm presence in the back of his head, but he was himself. "I think so," he said. "Are you? Nira closed her eyes. She felt the heavy burden of her duty, the weight of the armor she had worn for so long, finally lift. "I am free," she said. The aftermath was messy, as revolutions always are. Senator Varen Sol was found in his bunker, trying to shred physical documents. He was arrested by a squad of defecting night wardens and dragged into the light of the plaza, where the people did not kill him, but simply watched him with pity as he was taken away. The Senate was dissolved. In its place, a provisional council was formed, comprising representatives from every district. Salith presided over it, not as a remote monarch on a throne, but as a facilitator. Her first act was to push through the transparency reforms, outlawing the manufacture of fear and opening the archives of the night wardens to the public. Nira Voss faced a military tribunal. Technically, she had committed treason, mutiny, and the destruction of imperial property. The trial lasted 1 hour. Outside the courthouse, a crowd of 50,000 people gathered. They chanted her name. They held up signs with the image of the glowing shield, the symbol of the new era. The judges looked at the evidence. They looked at the crowd. They looked at Nira, who stood before them without shackles, her head high. Case dismissed. The High Magistrate ruled, slamming the gavel. Nira walked out onto the steps. The roar of the crowd was deafening. She did not wave. She simply nodded, acknowledging them. A warrior who had finally put down her sword. 6 weeks later, the city was rebuilding. Scaffolding covered the scars on the buildings, and the markets were bustling with a chaotic, vibrant energy. The sky was a natural blue during the day, and at night, the healing twilight washed over the city, a time for rest rather than terror. Elias sat at a small outdoor cafe in the middle tier, nursing a cup of coffee that actually tasted like coffee. His data pad was on the table. He was writing the final chapter of his book. He had decided to call it The Light We Keep. A shadow fell over the table. "Is this seat taken?" Elias looked up. Nira stood there, and she wasn't wearing armor. She was wearing a simple jacket and trousers, looking remarkably beautifully civilian. The violet markings on her skin caught the sunlight. "Depends," Elias said, leaning back. "Are you a spy?" Nira sat down, stealing a sip of his coffee and grimacing. Too bitter. "And no, I am unemployed." Elias grinned. "I heard the new council is looking for a chief of planetary safety, someone with experience in crisis management and ghost busting." "I turned it down," Nira said. Elias raised an eyebrow. "Really? Why?" Nira looked out at the city. She watched a group of children playing near a fountain, chasing a holographic butterfly. They weren't looking at the clock. They weren't afraid. "Because I am done with safety," she said. "Safety is just survival. I want to live." She turned back to him. The bond hummed between them, a comfortable, permanent melody. She reached across the table and took his hand. "Besides," she said, her eyes dancing with a hint of mischief, "I have a human to look after. He has a tendency to jump off buildings and propose marriage to mining conglomerates. Elias laughed. It was a good sound. So, he said, what do we do now? Nira squeezed his hand. We rebuild, she said. We figure out who we are when we are not fighting. And we make sure that no one ever has to be afraid of the dark again. Elias looked at her, and he knew that the story wasn't over. It was just beginning. Survival, he realized, wasn't just about staying alive through the night. It was about refusing to become the darkness you escaped. It was about choosing a love that honored freedom every single day. He closed his datapad. Sounds like a plan. Nira. Sounds like a life. Elias. They sat there as the sun began to set, watching the gentle, healing twilight descend over the city they had saved, together.